Facebook takes about a minute to load up. You're all good. Okay, go ahead, Ian.
Okay, I open this meeting and welcome Asley, is it?
Ashleen.
Ashling? Okay.
Ashleen.
I
know.
go by Ash.
Well, welcome and look forward to working with you.
Yep, just so everyone knows, this is Ashleen Laverty, and she hails from St. Thomas, I think, originally, and now lives in Central Elgin. She previously worked for the City of London as well as Oxford County most recently, so she has lots of experience at various levels of government, and she also ran the Committee of Adjustment in the City of London, which gives her that background in committee committee running, and she has a lot more knowledge than I do actually of running committees, so that's great. We're really lucky to have her, so I'd like to welcome her, and she'll be a familiar face going forward. So
welcome. It's nice to have you with us and look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any of the committee have anything to say on any items just to bring up for what you've seen? And
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I have one. I'm just wondering, some of these forms were getting filled out and we changed some of them for farms that they have to list all that they own and what they do or what they're proposing. We seem to be getting more people buying up some of this land. And I think we should be on top of where they're coming from and what they have and what their ideas are. Anybody else have anything to say on that?
I would agree with that, Ian.
I think we just need the forms really filled out where the farms are they own and what their proposal is to do it. We don't want people, I don't feel, to try and buy a farm and then put 2 or 3 houses on it. And I think we've got to watch that very closely.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
we
got something new?
Yeah. Like, I know we're going through here and I'm looking at these and it says that we need the one filled out with all the adjoining landowners. Well, that one never seems to be filled out. And I have had people say to me, how come I didn't know about this severance happen next to me till I seen the yellow sign go up? So I'm not sure what's happening there. And then the one where they have to list the farms that they have their home farm operation. A lot of cases that one isn't being filled out, and it's not being filled out for a reason because they don't have a home farm operation.
Okay, so for those questions, the first one with respect to the notice. So Appendix B used to be required where the county would send the application to the local municipality. The local municipality was required to give us back a list of addresses for us to circulate the application to. But we don't do that anymore. And in fact, we need to amend that application because the circulation lists that we use, we draw from the same place as the local municipalities, which is our Elgin County mapping, which we get from property assessment. So there's no need to get them from the local municipality because generally that's the exact same information. They would use the Elgin County mapping system like we would use it to generate our labels. Now, in terms of people not getting notice, that's why we put the signs on the property too, because unfortunately we do rely on a property assessment, which doesn't get updated on our system and on anyone's system usually. Sometimes it can take up to a year. So sometimes there's a lag between if a new person's moved in, excuse me, and it's not reflected in our system. And there really isn't a better way to do that at this point because it's just not responsive enough. So as we make better mapping changes, I think, and hopefully have a more responsive system and work better with our local municipalities in terms of providing that information, then I think we'll be able to make sure that those kinds of things don't fall through the cracks. But at this time, that's a problem. Then we definitely know that it's a problem, and we'll work to try to find a better solution. In terms of filling out the application form, we do our best to review and ensure that that information is provided. But at the same time, allowing, a lot of these people are not very savvy in filling out application forms. So we try to do our best to help them as well as allow them to submit based on the information they have. But it's a comment that I've heard before as well, that potentially farmers or whomever is making the application is not filling out the form correctly. So if that's the case, we will make sure that we're more diligent going forward, especially with Ashleen on board now. I think we have a better two sets of eyes potentially on applications, so we can ask those questions early on. So we'll hopefully do a better job going forward with these.
Okay, thanks for the clarification on that first part there, Nancy.
Yep, no problem.
Yes. And one other question, Nancy, there's been some concern from, and I don't know how this goes, but property owners abutting are starting to see pictures, just hand-drawn drawings that don't make sense to even the neighbors. And they're wondering why, because there's a way to get a map or have a surveyor come and do a rough outline for you anyway. But there's some that aren't showing some of the material, some of the exact what's in that area. The hand drawing isn't really right. And some of the neighbors start seeing that and, well, what's he talking, you know? So I think we've got to be careful on those hand drawings.
Yep, absolutely. And that's something we'll have to check going forward too. Again, it's it's hard when you're trying to, like the people that are applying very often don't want to upfront, and we've had this discussion before, I know, but they don't want to upfront necessarily the cost of hiring someone. For instance, there was a application that had been an inquiry, and as it turns out, the size of the lot, in my opinion, is probably too large from a surplus farm domain perspective. But the applicant had gone ahead and gotten a survey done, which then now they have to go back potentially and correct that, which will cost them even more money. So see, there's kind of that balance of spending money up front, but at the same time also providing the information we need while still allowing for, we don't require surveys to be submitted with an application, but we do ask for certain things. So we'll do our best going forward to make sure that it's legible, understandable, that all the information is there as well.
Any other questions?
Yeah, John, Mr. Chair, may I ask a quick question?
Yes.
I think you guys brought up some really good points here. Should we reach the point at some point of if these materials are not filled out, the application is not accepted for consideration by the committee, are we putting ourselves in any kind of legal jeopardy by approving something that perhaps the home farm material isn't completed? Where does that put us?
From that perspective, it would be more so, there's two sets of conditions anyways that happen. So we have the local municipality, which usually has local knowledge as well of properties and what's on a property, and if the drawings are correct, that kind of thing. So we have that layer, which I think really helps, because obviously me being at the county, I certainly don't know every property, and it's hard for me to know the particulars. I would look at it from an aerial perspective, for instance, and try to understand what's currently on the property. But even aerial photography, it's only run every 5 years, so certainly it's not necessarily reflective of what's on the ground now. It'd be great if we could actually even get to the point of doing site visits for these types of things, but of course, this is not the climate that we're doing those sorts of things in right now. So that would be a really helpful extra step. We also rely, though, on committee members who are able to go out and do those site visits and inform us if anything is incorrect in terms of the drawings themselves. So when we get to a actual decision, at that point, there's been several sets of eyes that have seen it. And so I'm not as worried then that the appropriate review hasn't been done, and that the appropriate information hasn't been provided or brought to light or what have you. So in terms of liability, I don't think there is a liability. Really, what it comes down to is just ensuring that we have all the correct information before the committee, so they can make a reasonable recommendation based on what we have. So.
Okay, it's now 9:15, so I'd like to have the approval of the minutes for the March 24th meeting. And if we have any inquiries or want to talk about a few things, if the committee wishes, we can do it at the end of the meeting. But I'd like to start because it's 9. Yes,
I so move the minutes.
Moved by Rosemary,
Second,
There are a
Dennis.
couple, there are a couple of changes that need to be made, but we can save that to the end of the
Okay.
meeting.
no. Bring them up, John.
Yeah, if we have issues with the minutes, please bring them up.
Bring them up.
I'll be very quick. They're very straightforward. The E3-21 that's at the end of the grouping in the minutes is identified as 1021 a couple of times. That's on pages 14 and 15. So that 1021 has to be taken out. And then the E1021 is addressed again on pages 15 and 16. I think they just weren't removed when it was being put together. So it needs to be taken off the minutes.
Okay,
Okay,
we'll make those corrections.
Thank you.
any other corrections? I'd ask you to call the vote.
Okay, so this is a vote, sorry, it was, it was moved by Rosemary and seconded by
Dennis,
Dennis. Okay, I'll call the vote for approval of the minutes from the March meeting. John Andrews? He's not on the call.
not on,
I'll do it again. John Andrews? Okay. Ian Fleck?
yes,
Dennis O'Grady?
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy?
Yes.
John Selden?
Yes.
Jack Van Kasteren?
we've lost Jack.
Oh,
No.
Lost.
Jack Van Kasteren? No, he's not on the call anymore. Okay. Doug Aldred?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. No, 5-2, I think. When if someone is not able to speak, I believe it's a no, so it's 5-2.
Yes. Okay, so we'll now deal with application E1421. And take notice that an application is made by Margaret Berry, 377 Warren Street, Port Stanley, for consent pursuant to section 53 of the Planning Act 1990, as amended to sever lands municipally known as 377 Warren Street, municipality of Central Alban. The applicants propose to sever a parcel with a frontage of 7.9 meters, 25.91 feet along Warren Street by an irregular depth and an area of 1.238 hectares, 3.06 acres, proposed for future residential use. The owners are retaining 0.213 hectares, which is 0.53 acres, proposed to remain in residential use. The applicants also propose to create two easements. The first easement having a width of 3 meters, 9.84 feet, and a depth of 119 meters, 390.4 feet, is proposed to modify an existing gas easement in favor of Enbridge/Union Gas. The second easement having a width frontage of 8 meters, 26.2 feet on Warren Street by a depth of 17 meters, 55.8 feet, is proposed to provide a right-of-way in favor of Margaret Berry, 377 Warren Street. And do we have any of the applicant or any agents and interested parties who wish to speak to this application? Please introduce yourselves to the committee.
Good morning, committee. My name is Matt Campbell. Trust everyone can hear me okay. I'm the agent on this application, and with me today is Mario Garcia. He is the developer on the project. I understand Margaret Berry. We're just acting on her behalf, and she's provided authorization to submit these applications. In terms of process with the committee, would staff be providing a presentation at this time, or would you like our comments now?
Go ahead, Nancy.
Okay, I was going to say you can go ahead and provide your comments, Matt, and then I will go through the comments provided after that.
Okay, sure. So I'll provide a brief overview of what we're seeking to do here. And the image that's up on the screen right now is a good one to go off of. So the retained lands are occupied by Margaret Berry's dwelling and a couple of accessory buildings. And as the committee chair noted, there are 2 easements that are proposed. So firstly, the severance to sever off the larger portion of lands that abut Kettle Creek, that's to facilitate a future residential development. And we've been in consultation with the municipality and county and conservation authority for quite some time. I believe this goes back to about 2018. When this project was originally brought to the municipality, county, and conservation authority. Together with this consent application, we have filed a zoning bylaw amendment to permit the proposed development. And I don't want to get into the weeds of the residential development that's proposed, but it is a 14-unit townhouse condominium arranged in a cul-de-sac format. We have a plethora of supporting studies for this. I know that there were some comments from the public regarding flood hazards. I'd refer the committee to the flood hazard assessment that we had prepared, which has been signed off by Kettle Creek, which demonstrates that there will be no adverse impacts as a result of this development, both on the site and on any upstream or downstream properties. In terms of the 2 easements, the rejigged easement for Enbridge, Union Gas, that is intended to provide a suitable building envelope. We do have a letter from Enbridge agreeing to this proposed routing. They agree with it, they have no concerns with it, and that is the work for that is going to be entirely at the cost of the developer. Enbridge has just provided their authorization for us to do so. The second easement, which is right, if you look on the bottom right corner, the intent of this easement is to facilitate a shared access. So right now, there are 2 driveways on the property. And I'm not sure if this air photo lines up quite exactly with the property lines that are actually on the ground. But that easement should line up with the easterly driveway on Warren Street. Right now, there's 2 driveways, and we're proposing to consolidate those driveways based on some of the concerns that were expressed by county engineering staff, just so we don't have too many vehicular access points that might, could have created some sort of concern. So the way that this easement is intended to work is that there will be a formalized driveway created to provide access to the severed lands for the townhouse development. And as part of that first portion of that driveway, the owner of 377 Warren, the retained lands, would have easement over that portion in order to get to that property. So the westerly driveway on that U-shaped driveway is proposed to be removed. I know at Central Elgin Council the other night, there was a concern about the proximity of the driveway to a crosswalk. And you can see on this plan that you can just make out the crosswalk by the westerly leg of that driveway. Again, that portion of that driveway is to be removed, so there isn't going to be a conflict with that crosswalk as exists today. I think that's a brief synopsis of the proposal. So if the committee has any questions, we're happy to answer them. Again, we do have Mario Garcia, the developer, on the project. We have a number of technical studies that we may wish to rely on in our discussion today. I'm happy to provide any details that the committee may ask for.
Okay. Are there any questions of any of the members? John Selden?
Through you, Mr. Chair, is Dennis still available? I wanted to ask about the Conservation Authority's report. Mr. Campbell's brought that up and addressed it, the issue of flooding, certainly in line, or certainly with the additional information in from the comments that Nancy sent yesterday from Mr. Griffiths. I was surprised at the Conservation Authority's response being so positive about the flooding, considering the issue of the edge and the floodplain area. And now the issue is brought up by Mr. Griffiths. Is that material that Mr. Griffiths addressed, was that addressed by the Conservation Authority? I don't remember seeing anything in their summary in the correspondence we got about what Mr. Griffiths brought up. I find it worrisome.
So if I can, the KCCA did provide comments, so they have reviewed the floodway analysis, I believe, that was submitted by the applicant, and have indicated that that they have demonstrated that whatever, I'm assuming there's going to be some sort of what do you call it, flood control measures implemented through the development potentially, which would help to ensure reduction in flooding concerns, or removing flooding concerns on this property. Now, in terms of the comments from adjacent neighbors, I'm assuming that they also experienced some level of flooding because of their proximity to the river as well. So in short answer, no, KCCA did not was not aware of the comments that were provided through the neighbors for this severance application. But you should also note that there will also be a zoning bylaw amendment, as Mr. Campbell has noted, with the municipality. And at that time, it will also be circulated to the neighbors as well for their comment. And at that time, KCCA will also be providing their comments on any development of this property. So I'll just leave it at that. That's generally what we've received so far.
Are there any
Mr.
other
Chairman?
questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yes, Dennis?
Yeah, sorry about that. I've been having some web issues on my end. I'm on Rogers. What a surprise, I know. But two things. The applicant talked about, and the Kettle Creek has got lots of information, but the Kettle Creek they're simply approving the severance. They have yet to make any firm commitment, according to their letter, no firm commitment on the permit itself. So I'm assuming you've not submitted a permit application to the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority yet?
Through the chair, that is correct. The way that this development is going to proceed is there's a number of different planning applications that we need to go through prior to the point that we would get to applying for a KCCA permit. So this application, together with the zoning bylaw amendment application that has currently been submitted, that's step one. We still have to go through the site plan approval application that's administered by the municipality of Central Elgin, as well as the plan of condominium application, which is administered by the county. And usually at the site plan stage, right when site plan is wrapping up, at that point, we would apply for the KCCA permit. We have been in quite a bit of consultation with them. I don't expect that they would not issue a permit based on the discussions that we've had with them to this point.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, my second question is based on the very end of Nancy's report. It talks about how the township has not yet passed a zoning bylaw. And so I'm wondering if we have to defer this application because we should not be approving it without knowing what the zoning bylaw and the conditions that the municipality are putting on it. For the sake of transparency, I think that needs to be in the public view, and I think that we need to see it before we approve this application.
So through you, Mr. Chair, just so you're aware, Central Elgin did provide comments, and one of their conditions is approval of a zoning bylaw amendment to permit the townhouse development on the severed lot. So that is a condition of so the applicant then is required within a year's time to complete that zoning bylaw amendment in order to be able to demonstrate and to receive final approval for this consent. So that's been asked for by the municipality of Central Elgin as one of their conditions.
Yeah, I understand that, but we still don't know what the conditions of that zoning bylaw are going to be. And and I could be wrong, but I think most of the other zoning bylaws that have been included in recommendations coming from municipalities, they actually state what the new zoning bylaw designation will be. Here, it's a blank slate. We have no idea what they're going to be saying, what conditions they're going to be putting on it, what the zoning is going to be. And I think for the simple reason that this is an open hearing where we have to share all the information with the public prior to our approval. I just think that it doesn't sound like it's going to be an issue. It doesn't sound like it's going to slow anything down. But I do think that we should not get into the habit of accepting the say-so of the municipality that what they're going to do in a very generic sense. And then we should just approve that. I'm not in agreement with that.
Nancy?
Okay, well, it's up to the committee to determine if that's the recommendation that they want to go with. I can go through, though, the comments that were also received by Central Elgin as well as the county comments. And then there's also members of the public that I believe are on the call and they may wish to speak as well. And I will go through some of the comments that I received to that if you'd like.
I have one comment.
Mhm.
As chair, is this not a severance, as something like a subdivision when somebody buys a piece of property and asks for it and then have to do all the steps to put a subdivision in? Where they've done a severance on a piece of ground from another piece of ground to build a subdivision or to do building on, where they have to go through all these amendments. This is just the first step.
That's correct. So from what I understand, the applicant wishes to create the parcel that ultimately they would like to develop, and then the balance of the lands remains with Mrs. Barry, who owns the lands. So it's basically a first step in determining just the land area for a future development.
That's right. And then the steps are like, they go back through the municipality and then the county and conservation authority to get everything cleared up.
That's correct. Yes, there would be multiple steps, as Mr. Campbell noted. There's several applications. There is a zoning bylaw amendment that has been applied for, I believe, at Central Elgin. There will also need to be a site plan application. There will ultimately be a condominium application as well. Now, the condominium application is not a public application if it's a standard condominium, which is a type of condominium. And I don't believe actually site plan is, I don't think at the municipality is also a public public process. I think site plan generally is an administrative process. But the zoning bylaw amendment would be circulated and is a public process and would have input from the public.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Would you like me to go through the comments right now?
Yes, please. Do
Okay,
we not have Jack on there with us?
I think we've lost Jack.
Okay,
Oh,
I
he's
am back again.
He's back.
thanks, Jack.
Computer shut down.
Okay, so from the municipality of Central Elgin, council has no objections to the consent application, provided the following recommendations and conditions: the approval of a zoning bylaw amendment to permit a townhouse development on the severed lot and to bring the existing house and accessory buildings on the retained lot into conformity with the Village of Port Stanley zoning bylaw as amended. The applicant enters into an agreement with the municipality of Central Elgin to address administrative, technical, and financial matters relative to the development of the subject lands, the payment of cash in lieu of the dedication of 5% of the land for parkland purposes, a copy of the reference plan to be provided to the municipality of Central Elgin, and a drainage reassessment be done if necessary at the owner's expense. Those were the comments received from Central Elgin. From Kettle Creek, staff reviewed the subject application. KCCA understands that the subject application proposes to sever a parcel of land for future residential use. Recommendation: KCCA staff is satisfied that the proposed consent is consistent with the natural hazard policies of the provincial policy statement, and that based on our mandate and our policies, we have no objection to its approval. And then a permit would be required in the future for development. The county engineer provided the following conditions: that the owner dedicate lands along the frontage of the severed and retained parcels up to 15 meters from the center line of construction of Warren Street, County Road 21, to the County of Elgin for the purposes of road widening, if the right-of-way is not already to that width, to our satisfaction. A direct connection to a legal outlet for the severed lot is required if an existing connection is unavailable to the satisfaction of the county engineer. All costs to be borne by the owner. Discharge of water to the county and road allowance is prohibited. And that a lot grading plan is required for the severed lot. And the county planning comments, Generally, staff support the application, provided the conditions as noted are implemented. The previously noted conditions from the county engineer, a digital copy of the draft and final deposited reference plan, and a solicitor undertaking to provide a copy of the registered deed for the severed parcel once completed. So, and then in terms of the public, we've had several submissions. Mr. Mark Hall from 37726 Lake Line. Thank you for your letter and details about the severance application. My formal concern would be that what type of residential zoning is proposed? Would it be the low density with the building size and height restriction in place? My concern would be that it would be medium or higher density zoning. With the seasonal trailer park already across the creek having a high density, which can be noisy late at night, early morning hours in the summer, adding more density to this area would be a concern for myself and my neighbors. If there was any risk of this potential severed land being zoned medium or high density, I would be in opposition to this severance application. Thank you for your considerations. Also, we received a letter from Laura Johnston, 3849 Union Road in Port Stanley. Her comments are identical, in fact, to the previous comments noted by Mr. Hall. We have comments from Gregory Galbraith, who 363 Warren Street, an adjacent neighbor. I am against the severance and the planned development for the property located at 377 Warren Street. The plan for 14 condominiums on the site would mean the removal of all existing mature trees and the backfilling of the floodplain on the long inside curve of the river. The property was referred to in the past as Barry's Bend Marina. This part of the river narrows and water during peak runoff from winter and spring overflows into the low-lying floodplain. The high volume of water going around that curve at such a strong velocity makes it the deepest part of the river in the Warren Street area. Last year, the curve had a water depth of 15 feet compared to 3 to 8 feet from the railroad bridge back to Sunset Avenue. The water spilling over onto the floodplain at 377 Warren takes some of the pressure off the water levels on the properties upriver, especially on the south side of the river on Warren Street, back up to Sunset Drive. The 20-foot high earth banks erode very quickly. If this property is backfilled and the floodplain is removed, the water levels will rise even higher during peak flows, causing me further erosion issues. This could also cause increased flooding in the trailer park on the north side of the river. Myself and my neighbors are already losing land as our grass and trees fell into the river. This severance and development will make my erosion matters even worse and accelerate the erosion of my property as well as my neighbors. I have lost approximately 6 feet of my frontage due to erosion in 4 years. I feel the best use for the property would be 1 or 2 single-family homes, leaving the floodplain intact and leaving many of the mature trees in place. The photos also show that most of the Barry property is on low-lying floodplain land, as well as the erosion of the 20-foot earth banks on the south side of the river. 2, I do not agree with the lot severance line on the proposed location map. I believe the rear lot line of the Barry property should extend to the river. This would give the Barry family a much more valuable piece of property in the future. And we've attached photos that were submitted on behalf of Mr. Galbraith as well. The next submission was from Bernard Capitano. The proposed severance and development will put these new condos approximately 30 feet from my house. The removal of the trees would take away my beautiful view and drastically change my living environment. I built this house to relax and enjoy my retirement in peace and quiet. I never imagined the city would entertain a project with such high density for this lot. Most of the Barry property is currently lowland floodplain. I believe the best use for the property would be 1 or 2 single-family homes with the floodplain intact, leaving many of the mature trees in place. He has also submitted, excuse me, several photos. And the final comment, we live at 383, sorry, this is from Wilma Van Varenberg. We live at 3830 Union Road and across the creek from this property. Our main concern is how the floodplain will be affected if that area is backfilled. As it stands now, the excess water has room to move during the spring thaw or with high water. If this area is backfilled, our property and seawall could be affected. And those were all the comments received.
Any further comment from any members?
Hi, I just want to also point out, whoever's on the call, could you please mute yourself? There's a lot of feedback coming through. If you're not speaking or if you're not on right now, please mute yourself. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask another question of you? I'm thinking about some of the things that you've just said. We get very few severance applications like this. Most of ours are dealing with single homes or a business or a single building. I don't recall in my couple of years on that we've had something that's dealing with this complexity. And the points that you raised, they make sense from a subdivision point of view. And so is that our role when we get into these higher development issues? Because there may be more of them as time goes on. So there's so many things going on in the background of this one. There are the floodplain issues, conservation authority permits, neighbors issues, a lot of rezoning that's got to be done, all of that stuff, site plan approvals, all of that. And so with all of this going on after the severance is granted, is it our role to simply say, well, our only job is we will grant the severance and then let the Planning Act process and the Conservation Authority Act process work its way through? Is that how we should be handling these intensive developments based on a severance of a parcel of land? So that's what I'm wrestling with in my mind. And so
Mr.
is that how we want to proceed with future intensive developments?
Through Dennis, I'm going to ask
Yeah.
Nancy to speak to that because there are some subdivisions being proposed now, but the final say for the plan, it come through the county as well when they approve it back to the municipality. Is that not right, Nancy?
So through you, Mr. Chair, in this particular case, normally subdivisions are the county is the approval authority. So they would be, we would be commenting on any subdivision activity, for instance. But in this particular case, this is all something that the lower tier municipality would generally deal with. So other than the consent application and ultimately the condominium application, which as I've mentioned is not really a public process, the local municipality will be the ones to approve the zoning bylaw amendment and the site plan ultimately if it was approved for this site. So it would be recommendations from the local municipality on this. And in terms of Dennis's comments about what does the committee, what should be the committee's role, at this time we have an application to sever lands for future development. The county has made their planning comments as well as the local municipality has made their planning comments as well. On its face, this is actually a severance that would facilitate future development. So it's up to the committee to determine if they have enough information, if the comments that were provided allow them to be able to approve or give conditions with respect to a severance on this property. And I'll leave it at that because it is ultimately rests with the Land Division Committee. So.
And Mr. Campbell, you'd like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to provide a little bit more information that may help the committee, the intent of this severance is to allow the current owner of 377 Warren, Margaret Berry, to live in that house. It's her intent to stay there for the foreseeable future. It allows the legal mechanism for my client to develop the rest of the property in absence of imposing any sort of constraint on Margaret Berry. Now, we were looking at the potential of developing this property as a whole, but that was not Margaret's wish. Her wish was to stay in her house. And this consent is intended to facilitate that. The other thing I wanted to bring up to the committee is that this application is not dealing with a specific land use. So we're not asking the committee to make a decision on the actual development that's been proposed. Rather, we're asking the committee to sever off just as Nancy said, a piece of land for a future development. There's the possibility that the development that is currently being proposed right now could be modified. But right now it's proposed as units. And again, we're not asking the committee to provide any decision one way or the other as to whether you like or dislike townhouse units, but rather just to set up the potential for future development on those severed lands.
Any further comments from the members?
If I may speak, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
through you, I think Mr. Campbell's remarks were really get at the heart of the matter. As I worked through this material, I kept saying to myself, am I looking at addressing a severance independent of what may happen to that property, to the retained property? Or am I approving the proposed development? And the answer I kept coming up with to keep it in the straight and narrow was that I'm being asked to look at the severance of the property, not necessarily the retained land, which apparently is going to face a lot more scrutiny to determine whether or not that development will go ahead. However, I do worry that passing or approving the application would be used as a de facto support for the development itself. And that worries me, but I don't know if that's a valid reason for denying the severance per se.
Any further comments from any of the other members?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's some of what I was trying to get at, and I think John put it more succinctly than I could. I'm not a big fan of orphan lots and granting severances on lots that can't be developed. I guess in the end run, I'm seeing that something can be built there. I'm not seeing any negatives, not seeing a lot of positives either. You know, no guarantees in the application, no guarantees in anything I've seen written, because there's still a lot of Planning Act applications. So I was trying to get at that with the zoning bylaw stuff, because, you know, in the end, we don't know if the zoning bylaw will allow development, but I'm willing to go on a leap of faith that there may be room in there for a scale down. Maybe it's not the whole 14 townhomes, but there seems to be a high enough ground to allow for a few at the very least. So I'm willing to go ahead with it, but I'm not a big fan of creating lots for future development when there's no guarantee that that future development has been allowed by the local municipalities or by the Conservation Authority. And John put it succinctly by saying it will, and it has been used. I've seen it used multiple times across the province. Well, I was already granted a severance. What do you mean I can't develop it? You know, who are you guys? So I've seen that argument. And so, but in this particular case, then I won't stand in the way of it, knowing that there's probably room for a few things to be developed on that property. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll move the recommendation of staff.
Okay, before we do that, can we open it up to the public? Because I believe there are several people on the call that may wish to speak as well.
We would like to. So is there any members of the public who would like to address the committee, Land Division Committee?
I thought there was, but I guess not.
Okay, so what, we have it moved by Dennis,
I'll second.
seconded by Rosemary. Any further discussion? Nancy, I'll call the vote.
Okay, we'll call the vote. The motion is to approve file E14-21 with conditions. John Andrews. Absent. Ian Fleck.
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady.
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy.
Yes.
John Sheldon.
Yes.
Jack Van Kasteren.
Yes.
Doug Aldred. Doug?
Did we lose him?
Lost him.
We've lost.
Oh, I can
You there,
I see
Doug?
him.
Hold your
Yes.
hand up.
There he is. Yes. Did I hear yes? Yes. Okay. Motion carries 6-1.
Now I have the decision rendered today for this application will be circulated within 15 days after the notice. There is a 20-day appeal period from the giving of the notice of decision in which any person or public body may appeal the decision or any condition imposed. If no appeal is received within 20 days of the giving of the notice, the provisional consent becomes final. The applicant has 1 year to meet the conditions imposed and submit the necessary documents for certification, or the consent will lapse and a new application will be required. Please leave the identification signs in place until the appeal period ends, after which they can be removed. If you would like to be notified of today's decision, please request a copy by contacting Nancy Pasto at npasto@algon.ca. A copy of the comment package is also available upon request.
Thank you very much, committee.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
Have a great day, everyone.
So our next application is E1521. An E1521, that take notice that an application has been made by Dave and Barb Wheeler, 8847 Iona Road, Dutton, for consent pursuant to section 53 of the Planning Act 1990, as amended to sever lands municipally known as 8847 Iona Road, municipality of Dutton, Dunwich. The applicant proposed to sever a parcel with a frontage of 30.48 meters, 100 feet, along Iona Road by a depth of 15.01 meters, 49.2 feet, and an area of 0.046 hectares, 0.11 acres, proposed for future residential use. The owners are retaining 0.33 hectares, 0.82 acres, proposed to remain in residential use. And I'd ask, is there any applicants or agents and interested parties who wish to speak to this application? Please introduce themselves to the committee. We have no one to speak to this application. Okay, Nancy, I'd ask you to go ahead. Can't hear.
Sorry, I muted myself. The following comments were received as part of this application from the municipality of Dunwich, sorry. Let me just make sure that this is not the one. That the Council of the Municipality of Dunwich recommends approval to the Land Division Committee this application, provided the following conditions are implemented: that a septic system review has been completed, that a municipal drain reapportionment has been completed, that a mutual drain agreement has been provided to provide a legal drainage outlet, that 2 hard copies and 1 digital copy of the registered survey have been provided to the municipality, taxes are paid in full, that all Dunwich planning application fees be paid to the municipality, that the solicitor provides an undertaking that a copy of the registered deed be provided, and that the lots merge on title. There's additional.
Sorry, go ahead.
No problem. From the Lower Thames Conservation Authority, they have reviewed this application. Staff determined that the property in question is subject to the authority's development portion of the regulations. The issue of concern in this area is the adjacent lands to the natural watercourse and its associated ravine system. An application from this officer is required prior to any works or construction alteration taking place within the regulated area. The upper tablelands are not subject to flooding of a general nature, and such structures are not required to be floodproof. However, the floodproofing of structures for the purposes of prevention of flood damage from local overland drainage waters is always recommended. Setbacks from the ravine system of the natural watercourse will be required to any proposed structures. So that's a future note, a note for any future building permit applications. And the county engineer provided that this is not on a county road, so he has required no conditions. And comments from the County of Elgin planning staff. The application is consistent with the provincial policy statement, the county official plan, and the local official plan. We have no issues with the application, provided that the following conditions are also added: a digital copy of the draft and final deposited reference plan, a solicitor undertaking, and that the severed lands are deeded in the same name and interest as the abutting lot at 8837 Iona Road, and that section 50, subsection 3 of the Planning Act applies to any future consent. And those were all the comments received.
Are there any comments from the members of the committee?
Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman?
Or
Sorry, go ahead,
Dennis?
John. Go ahead, John.
Oh, thank you, Dennis. A couple of things. First of all, just for the committees, my sense on the septic review, I know this may be a small issue, but I don't know if we can get some message across to people who do the septic reviews, but the septic review refers to it as, quote, not failing, unquote. That's just not adequate as a positive comment on whether or not the septic system is okay or not. Maybe not failing, but it may be in bad shape. The other thing is, to Nancy in particular, Nancy, has the applicant paid his fees? Because, and should we defer this if the fees haven't been paid?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the fee for the severance application has been paid, the $1,250 that's required for submission
Yes.
of an application. What additional fees are you referring to?
Well, there's a reference in the Dutton Dunwich about the DO, the building inspector had not signed off as the severance fee hadn't been paid, and the drainage inspection hasn't been done as the severance fee hadn't been paid.
Oh, okay. So through you, Mr. Chair, Dutton has their own bylaw with respect to their fees that are required for the completion of any severance. So my guess would be that as part of, if you'll note, there's a condition from Dutton Dunwich that requires fees be paid to the municipality.
Yep.
So they have their own set of fees that are required for the completion of any severance. So any of those fees would be paid directly to the municipality, and it's one of their conditions. So that would be done at the next stage as part of their clearing of conditions. They'd be required to pay the municipality whatever outstanding fees are required.
So it isn't an issue for us to defer it just because they haven't paid Dutton Dunwich yet.
Through you, Mr. Not at this point, because they have asked for the condition to ensure that their fees are paid before they would consider entertaining the final severance. So I think they haven't asked for a deferral based on that. So I'm going to assume that their requirement is covered off on that condition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Nancy.
Dennis, you had a comment?
Yeah, just, Nancy, I'm just, at the very beginning in the application, they say it's for residential use, and then several pages down, it's a boundary adjustment. Haven't we had people just put in that opening paragraph or two that this is simply a boundary adjustment? When they put in it's proposed for future residential use, to me, it's wrong, and I gave it a lot more in-depth reading than I should have until I came across the words boundary adjustment and merging on title.
Mhm.
So we've seen that before where people just put a boundary adjustment, and that just makes the whole process a lot easier for everybody, doesn't it?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, absolutely. This is a boundary adjustment. It may not have been clear through the application notice circulation, but as one of the conditions, for instance, we are requiring the merging of the property on title with the adjacent property owner. So it ensures that we're not creating somehow its own standalone lot. This has always been intended to be a boundary adjustment.
No, yeah, no problem with that at all. I'm just asking that in the future, if we recognize that early on in the process, then we should make an adjustment to the opening paragraph so everybody's clear. It's a simple boundary adjustment. It's not future residential use.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions? So we have a mover and a seconder then?
I'll move it.
Moved by Jack Van Castren. Seconder,
I'll second.
John Selden.
Sultan. Okay, we'll call a vote. So this is for approval of application E 15-21 with conditions as noted. We'll take a vote. John Andrews. So absent. Ian Fleck,
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady,
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Yes.
John Selden,
Yes.
Jack Van Castren,
Yes.
Duke Aldridge.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
The decision rendered today for this application will be circulated within 15 days after the notice. There is a 20-day appeal period from the giving of the notice of decision in which any person or public body may appeal the decision or any condition imposed. If no appeal is received within 20 days of the giving of the notice, the provisional consent becomes final. The applicant has 1 year to meet the conditions imposed and submit the necessary documents for certification, or the consent will lapse. Please leave the identification signs in place until the appeal period ends, after which they can be removed. If you would like to be notified of today's decision, please request a copy by contacting Nancy Pasto at npasto@algon.ca. Okay,
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I could ask a question?
yes,
Just a point of order, Nancy. These recorded votes, are they to be 6-1 in John Andrews' absence? Is his vote count as a negative?
he's a,
Sorry.
go ahead, Nancy.
From what I understand, when someone gives prior knowledge that they will not be in attendance, so they have sent some sort of correspondence to let them know that they will not be in attendance, then they are not considered as part of the recorded vote. However, in this particular case, John did not submit that he was not going to be able to attend this meeting, so he's considered to be, I'm not sure what the term is, but basically he is considered to be at the meeting, but his lack of vote is a vote for no. It's a strange thing, but that's how councils work as well for some reason. So that's why it's each of these will now pass, or each of these votes will consider John Andrews to be a no.
I find that a bit disturbing, only because last meeting we had a recorded vote 3-3.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying if John Andrews had not advised us that he couldn't attend, then that motion would have been defeated based on his absence.
That's right.
Okay.
That's correct. So because he provided his absence from last time, he was not considered as part of that recorded vote. But in this particular instance, he because he has not provided that absence, he is still considered a vote. And because it's a lack of a vote, just like on the previous when Jack Van Kasteren was dropped, I guess you could say, like his he was not able to provide a vote. He was also sorry.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
you were considered to be a no as well.
Yeah, okay.
So
That's part of Robert's Rules of Order.
That's right.
it?
That's
Yeah.
right, Rosemary.
Thanks, Rosemary. Yeah, thanks, Nancy.
Okay. So the next application for 940 is Perzanovic Farms. Is that said right?
Hello, Perzanovic. Good morning. I'm Peter Perzanovic, and this is my brother, Mike Perzanovic.
Okay, I have some information to read. Sorry about the way I pronounced your name.
It's a fine Irish name, so it could be difficult.
Take notice, an application has been made by Perzanovic Farms Limited, 25468 Talbot Line, West Lorne, for consent pursuant to Section 53 of the Planning Act 1990, as amended, to sever lands municipally known as Part Lot 6, Concession 7, Fernaldville Road, Municipality of West Elgin. The applicants propose to sever a parcel with a frontage of 34.138 meters, 112 feet, along Fernaldville Road by a depth of 60.96 meters, 200 feet, and an area of 0.208 hectares, 0.51 acres for future residential use. Any applicants and agents and interested parties who wish to speak to this application, please introduce yourselves to the committee, and you have done that. So Nancy, will you proceed, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the following comments were received from the municipality of West Elgin. They supported this consent application for E16-21, provided the following conditions were included in the decision: that the applicant meet all requirements, financial and otherwise, of the municipality to the satisfaction and clearance of the municipality, that the applicant provides a description of the lands to be severed, which can be registered in the land registry office, that the applicant's solicitor provides an undertaking to the municipality to provide a copy of the registered deed, that the applicant shall make payment of cash in lieu of applicable parkland dedication pursuant to Section 51(1) of the Planning Act, that the applicant successfully applied to the municipality for a zoning bylaw amendment and to obtain relief to the zoning bylaw for the severed parcel and retained parcel, and having such relief to the zoning bylaw come into full force and effect, that the south branch of the Mackenzie Drain be improved pursuant to the Drainage Act through realignment to promote the orderly development of the severed parcel at the applicant's sole cost and expense, that the applicant have a drainage reapportionment completed pursuant to the Drainage Act to the satisfaction of the municipality, that the applicant have a septic system assessment be completed by a qualified individual on the proposed severed parcel to ensure that the lands are suitable for a privately owned and operated septic system, that the applicant applied for a municipal water connection at the applicant's sole cost and expense, that prior to final approval of the county is by the county is advised in writing by the municipality how the above has been satisfied, and that all conditions noted above shall be fulfilled within 1 year of the decision. Additionally, Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority provided the following comments. The lands are not subject to flooding of a general nature, and as such, structures are not required to be flood-proofed. However, the flood-proofing of structures for the purposes of prevention of flood damage from local overland drainage waters is always recommended. They have reviewed, though, and have no objections to the application as submitted. The county engineer provided the following comments. A direct connection to a legal outlet for the severed lot is required. If an existing connection is unavailable, all costs to be borne by the owner. That if necessary, an entrance permit be obtained from Elgin County for the entrance to the severed parcel, all costs borne by the owner, and that a lot grading plan is required for the severed lot. From the county planning staff, they have no objection to the proposed severance, provided the following recommendations are also included. Direct connection, a digital copy of the draft and final deposited plan, and a solicitor undertaking to provide a copy of the registered deed for the severed lands. And those were all the conditions and comments.
Any comments from any of the members?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Dennis here. Nancy, that RP, sorry, the registered plan 11R, was that never registered with all those lots on it? Is that why we have to do separate severances? Because normally when you register the plan, the lots are already created. What's going on there?
Yep, through you, Mr. Chair, from what I understand, any previous applications were never registered. The reference plan was never deposited, would be my guess. So based on the new Planning Act and the Planning Act regulations, you're required to apply for severance then. A reference plan can't be deposited anymore without approval from the appropriate approval authority. So, yeah.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it's John.
Sullivan?
Through you, Nancy, can I also ask about the PPS? I believe 1164 was used. Is that description the areas adjacent to and surrounding municipalities? I had just struggled understanding that. I was confused by the urban aspect. Are you comfortable with that? Only development that is related to the sustainable development or use of resources and resource-based recreational uses, including recreational housing. Is this housing for recreational use or for permanent housing, or is that not relevant?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So that information, I think, is that coming from the local municipality, those policies?
I think it's from the PPS. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, the PPS generally states that focus of growth would be within municipalities and settlement areas.
Yes.
This particular one is not within the county considered settlement area, so we've never identified this particular area as a settlement area. However, the local municipality has. They have special policies related to this site and this area. It notes it as being within a settlement area. So our official plan generally says that the local municipality identifies it as a settlement area, then we too will identify it as a settlement area. So that's why we're recommending approval for this, because technically, even though it's not identified as a county settlement area, it has been identified as a settlement area.
That's a big help, Nancy. Thank you.
Any questions from any other member? Do the applicants have anything to say?
We should talk about the drain.
Do you applicants have anything to say?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll
No
move
further
that-
questions? Dude, go ahead.
I will move that we accept this application.
Moved by Doug Aldred. Seconder,
I'll second, Dennis.
Dennis O'Grady.
Okay.
I'd ask you to call the vote, Nancy.
Okay, so for application E 16-21 to be approved with conditions as noted, we'll take a recorded vote. John Andrews, Ian Fleck,
Yes?
Dennis O'Grady,
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Yes.
John Selden,
Yes.
Jack Van Castren,
Yes,
Doug Aldred.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
So E16 is approved.
That's E16. Now proceed with,
Doug, Ian, you may need to go through the
yes,
approval.
sorry.
No
The
problem.
decision rendered today for this application will be circulated within 15 days after the notice. There is a 20-day appeal period from the giving of the notice of decision in which any person or public body may appeal the decision or any condition imposed. If no appeal is received within 20 days of the giving of the notice, the provisional consent becomes final. The applicant has 1 year to meet the conditions imposed and submit the necessary documents for certification, or the consent will lapse and a new application will be required. Please leave the identification signs in place until the appeal period ends, after which they can be removed. If you would like to be notified of today's decision, please request a copy by contacting Nancy Pasto at npasto@algon.ca. So that's for E621, and we are now able to proceed with E1721. Okay, Nancy? Take
Yes.
notice that an application as made by Paravanovich Farms Limited, 25468 Talbot Line West, West Lorne, for consent pursuant to section 53 of the Planning Act 1990, as amended to sever lands municipally known as part of Lot 6, Concession 7, Furnival Road, Municipality of West Elgin. The applicants propose to sever a parcel of the frontage of 34.138 meters, 112 feet along Furnival Road by a depth of 60.96 meters, 200 feet, and an area of 0.208 hectares, 0.51 acres for future residential use. The owners are retaining 36.62 hectares, 90.5 acres proposed to remain in agricultural use. Okay, Nance, and the applicants or agents are here.
Okay.
Okay, so Nancy, will you proceed, please?
I will. The previous comments, as noted by the municipality of West Elgin, they also support this application with the previously noted conditions. So I won't go through them again because they are identical to the ones previously outlined. Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority had the same comment. They do not have an issue with this application. The county engineer requests the 3 conditions as noticed previously: direct connection to the legal outlet, entrance permits, as well as lock rating plan are required. And the county planning staff do not have an issue with the application, provided that the aforementioned conditions, as well as our conditions related to digital copy of the draft and final deposited reference plan and a solicitor undertaking be provided. And that's all the comments received.
Any comments from any of the members?
I'll move it. Dennis O'Grady.
Moved by Dennis O'Grady.
I'll second.
second,
Can I make one comment here first?
Yes.
Noticed on page 98 of the submission here, and I think it's a typo, but it says further administration recommends condition of approval consent for the cash in lieu. And when you read down, it states in writing $500, and then in brackets, it has a numerical value of $750 per lot.
Nancy, do you have anything on that?
I don't, unfortunately. This is something the municipality asks for, so certainly the applicant can seek clarification with the municipality of West Elgin about what's required from them for cash in lieu. Usually it's per square, usually it's in regards to frontage, but every municipality does it differently, so unfortunately I can't answer that.
I just noticed it as a discrepancy I wanted to bring attention to.
Okay,
If I
thanks.
might interject here, I'm not aware of this at all. I thought we were current with any payments owing to the township.
We paid the township.
Through you, Mr. Chair, you would be required as part of any Planning Act application. There's a requirement for 5% parkland dedication, whether that be cash in lieu or whether that be actual lands given to the municipality for parkland. It's a requirement of the Planning Act for almost any application. So for any application, like for instance, these consents, you'd be required to either give lands for a future park or give cash in lieu. So the municipality will have a standard required, and they will, as part of the final approval for any of these consent applications, you'll be required to pay a particular fee in this case.
Yes, right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that was moved by Dennis O'Grady and seconded by John Selden, right?
That's
Okay. Any further questions?
No,
Call for the vote. Nancy, please.
Okay, so the application E17-21 be approved with conditions as noted. We'll take a vote. John Andrews, Ian Fleck,
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady,
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Yes.
John Selden,
yes.
Jack Van Kasteren,
yes,
Doug Aldridge.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
The decision rendered today for this application will be circulated within 15 days after the notice. There is a 20-day appeal period from the giving of a notice of decision in which any person or public body may appeal the decision or any condition imposed. If no appeal is received within 20 days of the giving of the notice, the provisional consent becomes final. The applicant has 1 year to meet the conditions imposed and submit the necessary documents for the certification, or the consent will lapse and a new application will be required. Please leave the identification signs in place until the appeal period ends, after which they can be removed. If you would like to be notified of today's decision, please request a copy by contacting Nancy Pasto at npasto@algon.ca. And Nancy, we're all right to start E1821? Yeah, it was pretty. Take notice that an application is made by Paravondis Farms Limited, 25468 Talbot Line West, Florin, Ontario, for a consent pursuant to Section 53 of the Planning Act 1990, as amended to sever lands municipally known as part of Lot 6, Concession 7, Furnival Road, Municipality of West Algon. The applicants propose to sever a parcel with a frontage of 34.138 meters, 112 feet along Furnival Road by a depth of 60.96 meters, 200 feet, and an area of 0.208 hectares, 0.51 acres for future residential use. The owners are retaining 36.42 hectares, 90.0 acres proposed to remain in vacant land agricultural use. Nancy, could you go ahead, please?
I will. Thank you. The municipality of West Elgin supports this application for consent, provided the aforementioned conditions are also added, which are identical to the previous two applications. The Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority has no issue with this particular application. The county engineer asks for their 3 conditions: direct connection to legal outlet, entrance permit, and lot grading plan are required. And the county planning division has no issue with this application, provided all of the aforementioned conditions are added, as well as a digital copy of the draft and final deposited reference plan and solicitor undertaking.
through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make the motion in light of the fact that these 4 applications are all identical. I think it's just a matter of putting the motion on the floor.
Yes, moved by Jack Van Kasteren. Seconder,
Second.
Rosemary Kennedy. Call the vote, please. Nancy?
Well, so the application E18-21 be approved with conditions as noted previously. We'll take a vote. John Andrews, Ian Fleck,
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady,
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Yes.
John Selden,
Yes.
Jack Van Kasteren,
Yes,
Stu Guldred.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
The decision rendered today for this application will be circulated within 15 days after the notice. There is a 20-day appeal period from the giving of the notice of decision, in which any person or public body may appeal the decision or any condition imposed. If no appeal is received within 20 days of the giving of notice, the provisional consent becomes final. The applicant has 1 year to meet the conditions imposed and submit the necessary documents for certification, or the consent will lapse and a new application will be required.
See us, so be careful.
Please leave the identification signs in place until the appeal period ends, after which they can be removed. Okay. So we can do E 1921. Let's now. Take notice that an application is made by Parazonovit Farms Limited, 25468 Talbot Line, West Lorne, for consent pursuant to section 53 of the Planning Act 1990, as amended to sever lands municipally known as part of Lot 6, Concession 7, Fernald Road, Municipality of West Elgin. The applicants propose to sever a parcel with a frontage of 34.138 meters, 112 feet, along Fernald Road by a depth of 60.96 meters, 200 feet, and an area of 0.208 hectares, 0.51 acres for future residential use. The owners are retaining 36.21 hectares, 89.5 acres, propose to remain in agricultural use. Nancy, will you go ahead, please?
Thank you. The municipality of West Elgin supports this application for consent, provided the conditions as noted previously on the other 3 applications are also included for this one. The Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority has no issue with the application. The county engineer requires 3 conditions, including direct connection to the legal outlet, entrance permits, and lot grading plan are required. And the county planning division has no objections to the application, provided additional conditions, solicitor undertaking, and a digital copy of the draft and final deposited plan are provided, as well as the other conditions as noted. And that's all that was received.
Any
I will move, we proceed.
moved by Doug Aldred?
Sorry, quick interjection, I forgot. There was an applicant, Gordon Frost at 12611 Ferniville Road. He is an adjoining neighbor, and he wanted it noted that he has issues with flooding when it rains, and that he wanted to make sure that this new property does not affect his drainage further, and that no further flooding will be on his property based on this new lot being created.
Any
I
other?
think municipality has addressed the drainage issues in the application.
Thank you, Doug.
I will leave my motion on the table.
Moved by
I'll second it.
second by Jack Van Kasteren. I'd ask for the vote, Nancy.
The application E19-21 be approved with conditions as noted. We'll take a vote. John Andrews,
No,
Ian Fleck,
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady,
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Rosemary?
Rosemary.
Yes, sorry, I didn't unmute.
John Selden,
Yes.
Jack Van Kasteren,
Yes,
Stu Guldred.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
The decision rendered today for this application will be circulated within 15 days after the notice. There is a 20-day appeal period from the giving of the notice of decision, in which any person or public body may appeal the decision or any condition imposed. If no appeal is received within 20 days of the giving of the notice, the provisional consent becomes final. The applicant has 1 year to meet the conditions imposed and submit the necessary documents for the certification, or the consent will lapse and a new application will be required. Please leave the identification signs in place until the appeal period ends, after which they can be removed. If you'd like to be notified of today's decision, please request a copy by contacting Nancy Pasto at annpasto@algon.ca. Our next one, 1020, is E2021. E2021. Take notice of the application was made by John and Teresa
I think we're
Vanderveen.
done, Michael, maybe.
All done? All four? Yes, we're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody got their mic on?
Yeah, Peter, yes, we're done, Peter. So,
Jennifer, we're completed?
Mr. Perzanovic, we're done with
Yeah.
all of your applications, so
Okay,
you don't
well,
need to remain
okay.
on the call.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
thank
you
you.
very much. Thank you.
So I'll read that take notice an application is made by John and Teresa Vanderveen, 9677 Carter Road, Aylmer, for consent pursuant to section 53 of the Planning Act as amended to sever lands municipally known as 11232 Willie Road, Municipality of Dutton Dunwich. The applicants propose to sever a parcel with a frontage of 70.2 meters, 230.31 feet along Willie Road by a depth of 114.049 meters, 374.18 feet, and an area of 0.84 hectares, 2.07 acres, containing one residence surplus to the needs of the owners. The owners are retaining 90.44 acres proposed to remain in agricultural use. Nancy?
Would you like me to go through the comments? I believe there's an agent also on the call for this
That's our
application.
agents. And interested parties who wish to speak to this application, please introduce yourselves to the committee. David Rowe?
He was here.
You're not turned on, Dave. We can't hear
He
you.
is-
He's not answering.
David, can you hear us?
Am I on now?
Yes.
There we go.
Oh, yes. Would you like to speak to this, David? Or I'll have Nancy speak first. He's not on.
David, you're on mute,
You're
David.
up. David, you're on mute again.
Am I unmute now?
There
Yeah.
we go.
We're
Okay,
good.
I'll leave it alone. I won't touch it. Thank you.
Okay, we'll have Nancy speak to it first, David.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first resolution from the Municipality of Dutton Dunwich Council, that the Council of Municipality of Dutton Dunwich requests that the County of Elgin table application E20-21 for 11232 Willie Road at this time. And if you've read the council was the previous planning report provided by the county staff, Municipality of Dutton Dunwich staff did support the application. However, from what I understand at council, there was additional discussion with respect to the, I believe it's the owner owning lands in the area. And I think that is what the issue was with this particular application. From the Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority, they provided the following. Staff determined that the property in question is subject to the authority's development and alteration to watercourse portion of the regulations. The issue of concern is the Eustace drain and erosion. An application from this office is required prior to any works or construction taking place within the regulated area. The lands are not subject to any flooding of a general nature, and as such, structures are not required to be flood-proofed. However, the floodproofing of structures for the purposes of prevention is always recommended. Setbacks from the waterway will be required to any proposed structures. Please be advised that the subject property is also located in a significant groundwater recharge area as identified through the Lower Thames Valley Conservation Assessment Report. For further information, you can follow the link that was provided. But generally, I believe the LTVCA has no comment. The county engineer provided that they are not on a county road, so there's no conditions required from their perspective. And the the county planning department has provided the following comments. County planning staff generally supports this application as it is consistent with both the 2020 provincial policy statement and complies with the County of Elgin official plan regarding surplus lot creation in an agricultural area. However, the municipality of Dutton Dunwich has requested a deferral for this application as the owner does not own a home farm abutting within Dutton Dunwich. And those were, I believe, all the comments received for this application.
David, you have something to say? Comments?
Yes. My understanding is that Dutton Dunwich has amended their official plan, taking out the requirement of owning land either within Dutton Dunwich or within the abutting municipalities. And that amendment is been approved by Dutton Dunwich Council and is actually at the county for approval and going through the process there. And the suggestion of the council was that they defer this application at that time and bring it back once the county has given approval to their proposed amendment. We feel that is reasonable. And I guess my only other question would be to the county, what is the likely best guess as to when that amendment, and I guess others as part of their 5-year review plan of their plan, will be approved at the county level?
For you, Mr. Chair, so we're reviewing it right now. However, from what I understand, Dutton Dunwich is actually looking now. I believe their council has indicated that some of those conditions that they were previously looking at removing for their severance policies may in fact be altered again. I don't know. I haven't spoken with the planner, so I'm not aware of what conditions they're considering on adding or not removing at this time. In terms of the actual official plan amendment we have right now, we have another month, I think, before we're in a position to be able to approve something like that at county council. So certainly, if that's the case, this may be deferred then for a few meetings, not just one. And it also is dependent on what ends up being the direction of Dutton Dunwich Council with respect to these criteria that they have in the official plan on their consents.
That's fair enough, I think. So we don't have an issue with the deferral at this time.
Mr. Chairman, Dennis here. I'd like to make a motion that this be deferred to, I'm not sure how to word it, the next appropriate meeting after the county and or township have approved their amendments. And Nancy, you can put it in the proper technical wording, and that there be no additional fee for this deferment.
Thank you very much.
Just one question. I had one question for you, David, as a member from Dutton Dunwich.
Okay.
They own that farm now, right?
That's my understanding, yes.
They sold the farm to an abutting landowner?
That I'm not aware of.
Okay, because there was signs up and people are saying that the land has been sold.
I'm not aware of that. I certainly will discuss that with my client.
Okay, I'm only asking that question because that's one of the things I'm hearing.
Okay, well, that's very good information, and I'll discuss it with my client.
Can I comment on that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's Dave Durham here. I am the abutting landowner. I have made an offer to buy the farmland, not the house, the farmland. And the closing date will not be until October 28th because we need to wait, of course, for the severance. But I have an agreement to purchase the land, but it's not final, of course, until severance is approved. Because I don't want the house.
Yeah. No, I understand, David, and I didn't know you're there, and I appreciate hearing from you.
Okay.
And it was just a concern that I know a couple of the council members asked me and I said I wasn't aware.
No, I bought I made an agreement with in March to buy the land.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I add just a few words then?
Yes, thanks, David.
I guess if that is the case, then it would appear that we may be simply able to amend the application and because David Durham, if he owns the adjoining farmland, would also likely qualify for the consent as well. So I will discuss it with my client and David Durham and the county.
I have, and Dave Durham here again, I have told your client that I would gladly sever the house if necessary.
Okay, well, that's fantastic to hear. So leave it with me and we may be able to have this resolved sooner rather than later.
Okay, David Rowe, I was just trying to.
Well, I thank you very much.
I appreciate you, David Durham, being there. I appreciate the information.
Thank you.
Can I make one
Mr.
comment,
Chair.
Ian?
Yes, Jack?
Oh, I was just gonna say, there's still a motion on the floor. I just wanted to second that motion before further discussion.
Okay,
Chair,
Sorry.
may I make a brief comment?
we will, first of all, we did have the motion moved and seconded, right, Nancy?
Yes, do you want to call a vote?
No, I want to hear from
Discussion.
John Selden first.
Discussion.
Thanks. It's a small point, but I think the area is incorrect. It's indicated as 0.84 hectares, and the numbers there show 0.80, not 0.84. I know it's a small issue, but it might be important unless there's some irregularity that just shows it to be 0.84. And also, we haven't discussed at all the size of the lot. I think this application showed that there wasn't much chance of changing it, but we're going ahead with a 2 acre or 0.8 acre, 0.8 hectare area. Do we have a problem with that?
Nope.
What's the wish of the committee?
Dennis here. I'm only going by the air photo and I don't have a big problem. I don't know if those lines are fixed. There's windrows there. There's a couple of barns there. If the barns were taken down, there certainly is room to reduce the size of that. But I don't know enough about that property, about whether or not the barns should be kept or whether or not they should be torn down. Normally, the township comments on that when they look at the severance, do they not? And those of you who know that property, I don't know. I don't know if the 2 acres is appropriate or if it can be reduced.
I make a comment here, Ian.
Yes, go ahead, Doug.
I think as the severance is presented, it was deferred. I think anything in that situation, we would have to look at when it's brought back.
That's right.
This is in a deferral.
I agree that it should be not anything discussed on that until it comes back on the deferral. Is that right, Nancy?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, I think that's correct. At this time, there's a deferral on the floor, and if if the committee wants to proceed with the deferral, then those sorts of items, like the size of that lot, can be looked at in greater detail at that time. I will note, though, for the applicant, that if there was the ability to reduce the size of the lot, that is something that we could look at and possibly amend the application for, noting the previous concerns that we've had with this committee on sizes of lots. And ensuring that the maximum amount of farmland is retained and that the smallest amount of surplus farm dwelling is done. So
it's supposed to
we have a motion on the
in 2 minutes.
On the floor. Can we have a vote for that, please?
That's not our.
Would you like a vote?
Though. It's another. They're talking about
Yes.
another one, but.
Just a second. Someone is not muted on this call that needs to be muted. Don Ferguson.
It says mute.
Don Ferguson. Hi. Can you please mute yourself? Thanks. Okay, sorry. We'll continue. So at this time, the motion is to defer application E
2021.
E20-21 to defer this to a future meeting of of Land Division Committee. We'll take a vote. John
My
Andrews?
motion, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, my motion should also read that at no extra cost to the landowner for the deferment.
Oh, okay.
For the
So the
applicant, I
motion,
should say.
right, is a deferral till the next appropriate meeting and no further additional fees for the deferment.
Correct.
Okay. So that motion, we'll take a vote. John Andrews? Ian Fleck?
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady?
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy?
Yes.
John Selden?
Excuse me, Nancy, yes.
Jack Van Castren?
Yes.
Doug Aldred?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
Do you
Okay.
believe this was one of the applications that we discussed earlier, did not have a completed Appendix C with it?
Pardon?
This was one of the applications that we had discussion earlier, didn't have the completed Appendix C included in.
That's right.
So then I would note to David Rowe that if there's going to be an amendment to this application anyways, we'll ensure that Appendix C is filled out correctly, depending on who's ultimately making the application. We may also need to recirculate this application, so.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. That's great.
So our next application is E2121.
Yeah, until
Take
I'm ready
notice
to
that an
go.
application is made by 943448.
Okay, arrow with the mute button.
Don Ferguson, can you mute yourself?
Can you mute yourself, Don, please? Take notice that an application is made by 943448 Ontario Incorporated, Dawson, 50338 Wilson Line, Springfield, for consent pursuant to Section 53 of the Planning Act as amended to sever lands municipally known as 51275 Wilson Line, Township of Malahide. The applicants propose to sever a parcel with a frontage of 68 meters, 223.10 feet along Wilson Line by a depth of 60 meters, 196.85 feet, and an area of 0.41 hectares, 1.01 acres, containing one residence surplus to the needs of the owner. The owners are retaining 33.1 hectares,
Test your speaker,
81.79
make sure you can
acres
hear others in the meeting.
proposed to
I
remain
can't
in
hear a damn thing.
agricultural use. If there's any applicants or agents and interested
this?
parties who wish to speak to this application, please introduce yourself.
Committee, Dave Rowe, I'm the agent for this application.
Okay, Nancy, can you proceed, please?
I can. The following comments were received. So the Township of Malahide has no objection to the proposed severance, provided the following conditions are applied: that the applicant initiate and assume, if required, all engineering costs associated with the preparation of a revised assessment schedule in accordance with the Drainage Act. That all
That's
outstanding
not,
work orders or bylaw
My
enforcement. Okay.
file anyway.
John Ferguson is
It
speaking
might be that
again.
they got me on mute because
Is
that's
there
not
any
my
way to
severance, even
mute
though this is supposed to
Mr.
start at 10:40.
John, can you mute
That's not
Mr.
my-
Ferguson, please? I think you might be able to.
Ideal.
If you click on his box, thanks.
Okay.
Sorry. That all outstanding work orders or bylaw enforcement issues be resolved to the satisfaction of the chief building official prior to the condition being deemed fulfilled. That the applicants initiate and assume all planning costs associated with the required official plan amendment, zoning amendment, minor variance, or other land use planning process as required. Confirmation that private sewage system be confined entirely within the boundaries of the newly created parcel, and that this system be in conformance with all required setbacks from lot lines. That necessary deeds, transfers, and charges for certificates and or instrument necessary for registration be submitted. That all applicable property taxes, municipal fees, and charges be paid to the municipality. That an electronic version of the reference plan be submitted to the satisfaction of the municipality. That the applicant is responsible to apply and pay all fees to the township
My thing comes
with
up and I
respect
think
to
that they
civic addressing
unmute
numbers.
me.
That the existing barn located on the retained parcel be removed or demolished, and the lands graded to a level condition to the satisfaction of the township, or has obtained a change of use permit from the township that eliminates the ability for the structure to house livestock, prior to the condition being deemed fulfilled. The Catfish Creek Conservation Authority has no comments with respect to this application. The county engineer also has no comments on this application as it is not on a county road. And the county planning staff support this application as it meets the policies of the PPS and the County of Elgin, provided the following conditions are applied: a digital copy of the draft and final deposited reference plan, and a solicitor undertaking to provide a copy of the registered deed, as well as the aforementioned conditions. And that is all the comments that were received on this application.
Any comments from Dave?
No, it's pretty straightforward application. I've got nothing really to add. Thank you very much.
Any comments from members of the Land Division?
I agree with that it's pretty straightforward. So I'll make a motion that we approve this application subject to the conditions noted.
I'll second.
Ann Castern, seconded by Rosemary Kennedy. Any further comments?
Mr. Chairman, a question?
Yes.
Sorry, go.
With regard to the barn on the retained parcel, we're giving the landowner the option of keeping the barn there. And I don't care if you demolish the stalls, they can also always be put back in the week after. So my question is this: when a barn is left that close to the property line, it doesn't require an MDS review?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the MDS policies require only if the barn can be used for livestock or the retaining of livestock. So there's particulars in the way that the MDS is written. But if it's, and I think that's why the condition is worded as such with respect to the municipality. They've added a condition that says either remove the barns in their entirety or have an inspection by a chief building official to ensure that basically these barns cannot be used to house livestock. I understand that potentially they could come back in and add in stalls or what have you, but through the Planning Act processes, this is a way to cover off and ensure that either the barns are not there or that any ability to house livestock has been removed. So
The township could have taken the option of zoning it to prevent livestock as well, could they not have?
Could I interject there? Please, through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Jack.
I'm just going to read number 9. The condition of Malahide Township pretty much covers it off. And as far as I'm concerned, the existing barn will be moved or demolished, or has obtained a change of use permit from the township that eliminates the ability for structure of livestock. So I think that pretty much covers any concerns.
That's right, it does. I agree with you, Jack.
So that change of use permit is ad infinitum? There's no time limit on it?
they'd be required either to, so they are required to fulfill that condition before we would receive, before they would receive final approval. So they either have to demolish those barns and then demonstrate that to the municipality, or they would have to get the chief building official to come in and inspect those barns and get.
Oh, I agree. I'm agreeing with you on that. My question is, 3 years from now, does that change of use permit, is it still valid?
Yes.
Yes.
So if there was a so if there was a contravention, for instance, in the future, from that perspective, then the municipality could go in and levy whatever it is they have with respect to their bylaws on that. So they would be in contravention, for instance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? We have a motion on the floor. Go ahead, Nancy.
Okay, so we'll do the recorded vote. File E21-21 to be approved with conditions as noted. We'll take a vote. John Andrews. Ian Fleck.
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady.
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy.
Yes.
John Selden.
Yes.
Jack Van Kasteren.
Yes.
Doug Aldrich.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
The decision rendered today for this application will be circulated within 15 days after the notice. There is a 20-day appeal period from the giving of the notice of decision in which any person or public body may appeal the decision or any condition imposed. If no appeal is received within 20 days of the giving of the notice, the provisional consent becomes final. The conditions imposed and submit the necessary documents for certification, or the consent will lapse and a new application will be required. Please leave the identification signs in place until the appeal period ends, after which they can be removed. If you would like to be notified of today's decision, please request a copy by contacting Nancy Pasto at npasto@algon.ca. Yes, ma'am.
Ian, I note that we are behind. However, it is 10:50 and the committee may wish to have a small break at the very least. We
Yes,
have
say
several
that.
applications after this, so maybe we can break for 5 minutes and then come
Let's take
back.
a 5-minute break.
Okay.
Is that all right with the committee? Take a 5-minute break now and then go through?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we're good.
Okay, take notice that application number E2221. Take notice an application is made by Patricia Zimmer, 49408 Glencolan Line, Elmer, for consent pursuant to section 53 of the Planning Act 1990 as amended to sever lands municipally known as 49408 Glencolan Line, Township of Malahide. The applicant proposes sever a parcel with a frontage of 59 meters, 193.57 feet along Glencolan Line by a depth of 85 meters, 278.87 feet, and an area of 0.49 hectares, 1.21 acres, containing one residence surplus to the needs of the owner. The owners are retaining 17.69 acres proposed to remain in agricultural use. Applicant or agent and interested parties who wish to speak to this application, please introduce themselves to the committee.
Good morning, it's Don Ferguson. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can, Don.
Yep.
Very good, thank you. I wish everyone a good morning, and I think the process that you have undertaken here with the WebEx meeting is excellent, and you're doing a very good job with it. I'm quite impressed. So carry on with that.
Thank you, Don, and I'll ask Nancy to speak to this application.
Yes, so the following comments were received from the Township of Malahide. Malahide Township Council has no objections to the land severance application, provided the following conditions are added: that the applicant initiate and assume, if required, all engineering costs associated with the preparation of a revised assessment schedule in accordance with the Drainage Act, that all outstanding work orders or bylaw enforcement issues be resolved to the satisfaction of the chief building official. The applicants initiate and assume all planning costs associated with any required official plan amendment, zoning amendment, or minor variance, or other land use planning process as required. Confirmation that private sewage system be confined entirely within the boundaries of the newly created parcel. That the necessary deeds, transfers, and charges for certificates and/or instruments necessary for registration be submitted in triplicate. That all applicable property taxes, municipal fees, and charges be paid to the municipality. That an electronic version of the reference plan be submitted to the satisfaction of the municipality, and that the applicant is responsible to apply and pay all fees to the township with respect to civic addressing numbers and signage. Let's skip ahead then to the Catfish Creek Conservation Authority had no concerns with the application. The county engineer provided the following: that the owner dedicate lands along the frontage of the severed and retained lots up to 15 meters from center line of construction of Glencolan Road, County Road number 32, to the County of Elgin for the purposes of road widening if the right of way is not already to that width. And that was the only condition from the county engineer. And the comments from the county planning staff. Generally, we support the application and ask for the following conditions as well: a digital copy of the draft and final deposited reference plan, and a solicitor undertaking to provide a copy of the registered deed. And those were the comments received for this file.
Do we have any comments from any of the members of the Land Division Committee?
Do, excuse me, Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes, John Selden.
through you to Nancy. Does the special agricultural
We
A2
can't
zones
hear you,
maintain?
John.
What's that?
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes?
Yes.
Did we lose them?
No, John, you've muted yourself.
There I am. Sorry.
There you go.
There we
Okay,
go.
you had a question?
Yes, the designation of the retained lot, it's such a small parcel as special agricultural A2. Does it retain the, no pun intended, the restriction on putting any new houses or any new residents on it? Or because it's so small, does the special aspect to that allow it to be turned into residential dwelling lots?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the municipality has asked for any applications that may be necessary, and one of those would be the requirement to remove the ability for additional homes on the retained parcel. So that'll be a requirement that Malahide will oversee. So as part of this, it's they use a more of a general condition, but it's the same sort of principle. They would look for a rezoning to ensure that the ability to add a home on the retained parcel is removed.
In spite of it being so small.
That's correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Dennis here. Along the same lines, I have no problem with the severance in the house. I mean, Aylmer's growing up that way. There's all kinds of development anyway, so none of that's an issue. It just seems a bit awkward the way they're going about it here. And those of you who understand the Planning Act better than me, but they've got a zoning bylaw that requires a 20 hectare for an A2 zone, and they're just obliterating that. They're dropping it by 2/3. And that, you know, when you got a zoning bylaw that has an area requirement and you basically ignore that, there's got to be a better way planning wise. I mean, can they just recognize that 15 hectares or whatever, 7 hectares is going to be residential in the very near future? But to even pretend that, you know, that they're doing it to retain a farm lot, it's just not accurate. I mean, is there not a better way to just call everything residential and call a spade there, as opposed to trying to pretend it's agricultural? Or can it not be merged? Does the owner not own land adjacent to it where the title can be merged? And I'd have no problem with that. I just don't like the way it's being done, because how do you justify anybody in the future requiring them to maintain 20 hectares in the future when you can simply obliterate it whenever you want as a council?
Yes.
So a couple things, I can comment on that. So at this time, these lands are designated as agriculture, so there would be no potential for this to be residential in the future. And in fact, we wouldn't want to encourage additional lots on this property, regardless of how small the resulting retained parcel is. Secondly, our policies do allow for someone to own these farmlands. I mean, they are still farmable. They could be part of someone's larger farm parcels, whether that be an adjacent neighbor or even somebody coming from outside to farm these lands. There is still the potential, and in fact, they are still farmed. The property generally is a smaller parcel and can be part of somebody's larger farm holdings. So there is the potential for that. And if there was the potential for residential development on these lands in the future, that would be something that would have to be addressed through an official plan amendment at the time, usually of an official plan review. I know that Malahide is currently going through the process of doing their official plan review. And I know the county as well is undertaking that as well. So there is the potential to expand settlement areas. I'm just not sure if this is one of those areas that we would be looking to expand or not. So there may be other lands that make more sense from that perspective, based on servicing, based on proximity to other farmlands, that sort of thing. So I don't want to presuppose anything, but at this time, these lands can continue to be farmed, basically the retained lands, even though they're small, they can be added to someone else's overall farm holdings, I think, so.
Well, I understand that, Nancy, but if we go, and a lot of what you said, if they had tried to justify it under some of those means, I might have been a bit more sympathetic, but if we just go by what they're saying that for this severance to proceed, you need 20 hectares, and they're not doing that. And so there's not a lot of justification in anything I see in writing that says why they're obliterating their zoning bylaw. It just says we are doing that. We're proposed to reduce it by 2/3. So it just, if we go by their own zoning bylaw, and we've run into this before where municipalities play around the edges with the area requirements that they're supposed to leave on the retained or on the severed. And we get that all the time, people inching away at it. And I think we've got some criteria for how much we're allowed to sort of go around the edges. But this isn't even going around the edges. So how do we justify that as a committee where the zoning bylaw says one thing and they're almost completely ignoring their own zoning bylaw? How do we treat that here? And then now how do we treat that in the future where a municipality chooses to not follow their own zoning bylaw? What do we do in the future in this particular case?
Nancy, I'd ask you to answer and then comments from the agent.
Sure. So just so you are also aware, so part of this would be that the Malahide planning staff have looked at this from the perspective of their policies and their zoning. And they've determined that, I mean, this is presupposing what they're doing, but basically if they've recommended approval for this, and as well if Malahide has recommended approval of this, this means that they're willing to go forward with some sort of zoning bylaw amendment to rectify the area, to identify the area as having reduced area. And one would assume that's basically how they're going to proceed with this. The other way to look at it is that the municipality in principle agrees with this severance, and that basically it's incumbent on the applicant to rectify the zoning in some manner, whether that be through a minor variance or whether that be through a rezoning. That is a requirement for this particular application. They'll be required to ensure that it does meet the zoning bylaw amendment, zoning bylaw. And if that requires a zoning bylaw amendment in order to do that, then I'm assuming that the municipality is possibly satisfied, or they'll review it as part of that zoning amendment. So for
any comments from the solicitor?
Well, that's correct. Nancy was spot on in her comments. The area is approximately 19 acres, just shy of 19 acres to start with, and it's been in place for some time. And the dimensions of the property are being reduced to the extent of the non-agricultural area. So there's no loss of farmland that's occurring here. And the new zoning that will be placed over the retained lands is an A2 zoning. And that is restrictive in terms of its future use in terms of any residential. So that sort of eliminates that as a possibility. And this is farmland. It will stay farmland for some time into the future, depending, of course, on the official plan or whatever amendments are made to the Township of Malahide discussions for public input. But at this stage, it's simply complying with the process for the terms. Right now, it's not of the minimum size of the acreage, but that's been that way for a long time. So that's not a surprise. And especially when there's not a loss of agricultural lands, I think the municipality is more than content to support the severance.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further comments? Otherwise, we have
I'll make a motion, we approve it.
Moved by Rosemary, seconder.
Jack.
Castron. Any further comments? Nancy, call the vote, please.
Well, the motion to approve application E22-21 to approve with conditions as noted. We'll call a vote. John Andrews. Ian Fleck.
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady.
No.
Rosemary Kennedy.
Yes.
John Selden.
Yes.
Yes.
Jack Van Kasteren.
Yes.
Doug Aldred.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-2.
The decision rendered today for this application will be circulated within 15 days after the notice. There is a 20-day appeal period from the giving of the notice of decision in which any person or public body may appeal the decision or any condition imposed. If no appeal is received within 20 days of the giving of the notice, the provisional consent becomes final. The applicant has 1 year to meet the conditions imposed and submit the necessary documents for certification, or the consent will lapse and a new application will be required. Please leave the identification signs in place until the appeal period ends, after which they can be removed. If you would like to be notified of today's decision, please request a copy by contacting Nancy Pasto at npasto@algon.ca. Thank you.
Are we muted?
We'll now be dealing with application 2321, Middlemarch Farms Limited. Take notice that an application has been made by Middlemarch Farms Limited, 30 Sympathy Court, St. Thomas, for consent pursuant to Section 53 of the Planning Act 1990, as amended to sever lands municipally known as 36309 Fingal Line, Township of Southwold. The applicants propose to sever a parcel with a frontage of 14.2 meters, 46.59 feet along Fingal Line by a depth of 438.6 meters, 1,438.98 feet, and an area of 0.97 hectares, 2.4 acres, containing one residence, surplus to the needs of the owner. The owners are retaining 38.73 hectares, 95.7 acres. And applicants or agents and their interested parties who wish to speak to this application, please introduce themselves to the committee.
Hi, Don Ferguson here, acting for the applicant Middlemarch Farms.
Thank you, Don. I'll now ask Nancy to proceed. Are you there, Nancy?
Sorry, I muted myself. The following comments were received from the Township of Southwold. Southwold recommends approval of the Land Division Committee application E23-21, subject to the lower tier conditions as noted. Unfortunately, give me 1 second. I just have to get to there.
Wrong address.
The following conditions are to be added: that the applicant meet all the requirements, financial and otherwise, of the municipality, that the applicant provides a description of the lands to be severed, that the applicant's solicitor provides an undertaking to the municipality, that the applicant successfully applied.
I'm not able to.
Oh, sorry.
Excuse me, someone's on the call that hasn't muted themselves. Can you please?
I got him, Nancy. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That the applicant successfully applied to the municipality for a zoning bylaw amendment and to rezone and obtain relief to the zoning bylaw for the severed parcel and retained parcel. That the applicant have a drainage reapportionment completed pursuant to the Drainage Act. That the applicant provide a mutual drain agreement pursuant to the Drainage Act. That the applicant have a septic system assessment be completed by a qualified individual on the proposed severed parcel to ensure that the lands are suitable for a privately owned and operated septic system. That prior to the final approval of the county is advised in writing by the municipality how the above noted conditions have been satisfied, and that all conditions noted above shall be fulfilled within 1 year of the notice of decision. The comments from the Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority. Please be advised that the above mentioned application has been reviewed and that we have no objections. This particular application is within the authority's development and alteration to watercourses portion of the regulations. So building permits would require a permit from the Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority. From the county engineer, the county has no concerns with this application. And from the county planning staff, We support the application, provided the following conditions are added: a digital copy of the draft and final deposited reference plan, and a solicitor undertaking to provide a copy of the registered deed for the severed parcel. And those were all the comments received.
Any comments from the agent?
No, this is basically a 98-acre farm property. The house is back from the road at quite a distance, and it's a somewhat awkward configuration because we wanted to minimize any land being taken out of production. The width is fairly narrow. That's to accommodate the road and the water line that runs back, and the hydro line. And so then it's a little bit larger area at the back, of course, where the property is, so that it can accommodate the septic tank and weeping bed.
Okay, thank you. Any
And
comments? Any comments from the members of the committee?
Yes, John?
Yes, John?
Mr. Chair, just a quick question for Nancy. Why A3 instead of A2 on the retained parcel?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure. That was from the municipality of, the Township of Southwold. So,
That's right.
I don't know why. Maybe it might have been an error for that matter. So, I'm going to assume that the municipality will ensure that the appropriate zoning is applied at the time of the zoning amendment.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Do we have a mover and a seconder?
I'll move, Dennis.
Moved by Dennis O'Grady,
I'll second.
second by Jack Van Castren. Any further
excuse me.
comments?
That was Doug.
That was
Oh,
Duke.
Duke, sorry. Any further questions? I'd ask Nancy to call the vote, please.
Okay, so this is for approval of application E23-21 with conditions as noted, and we'll take a vote. John Andrews, Ian Fleck,
Yes,
Dennis O'Grady,
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Yes.
John Selden,
Yes.
Jack Van Castren,
Yes.
Doug Aldridge.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
the decision rendered today for this application will be circulated within 15 days after the notice. There is a 20-day appeal period from the giving of the notice of decision, in which any person or public body may appeal the decision or any condition imposed. If no appeal is received within 20 days of the giving of the notice, the provisional consent becomes final. The applicant has 1 year to meet the conditions imposed and submit the necessary documents for certification, or the consent will lapse and a new application will be required. Please leave the identification signs in place until the appeal period ends, after which they can be removed. If you would like to be notified of today's decision, please request a copy by contacting Nancy Pasto at npasto@elgin.ca. We'll now do application E2421. Take notice that an application has been made by Middlemarch Farms Limited, 30 Sympathy Court, St. Thomas, for consent pursuant to Section 53 of the Planning Act 1990, as amended to sever lands municipally known as 36653 Fingal Line, Township of Southwold. The applicants propose to sever a parcel with a frontage of 58 meters, 190.29 feet along Fingal Line by a depth of 74.33 meters, 243.86 feet, and an area of 0.44 hectares, 1.09 acres, containing one residence surplus to the needs of the owner. The owners are retaining 60.1 hectares, 148.51 acres, proposed to remain in agricultural use. Applicants or agents and interested parties who wish to speak to this application, please introduce themselves to the committee.
I'm Don Ferguson, again for Middlemarch Farms on this severance.
Thank you, Don. Nancy, would you go ahead, please?
So the following comments were received from the Township of Southwold. They support the application provided the following conditions are added: that the applicant meet all requirements, financial and otherwise, that the applicant provides a description of the lands to be severed, that the applicant's solicitor provides an undertaking to the municipality, that the applicant successfully applied to the municipality for a zoning bylaw amendment and to rezone and obtain relief to the zoning bylaw for the severed and retained parcels, that the applicant remove or relocate the existing accessory use detached shed on the severed parcel to obtain zoning bylaw compliance to the satisfaction and clearance of the municipality, that the applicant have a drainage reapportionment completed pursuant to the Drainage Act, the applicant provide a mutual drain agreement pursuant to the Drainage Act, that the applicant have a septic system assessment be completed by a qualified individual on the proposed severed parcel to ensure that the lands are suitable for privately owned and operated septic system, that prior to final approval, the county is advised in writing of how the municipality has met the conditions, and that all conditions noted above shall be fulfilled within 1 year. The Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority has reviewed and has no objections to the proposal as submitted. Staff determined that the property in question is not subject to the authority's regulation. The engineer for the county has no concerns as this is not on a county road. And planning comments from the County of Elgin generally are supportive of this application, provided the following conditions are added: a digital copy of the draft and final deposited reference plan, and a solicitor undertaking to provide a copy of the registered deed. And those were all the comments received.
Just ask one comment, Nancy. Is Fingal Line not a county road?
Sorry, it is a county road. My apologies. But the county engineer had no concerns.
Okay, sorry. Any comments from any members?
Yes.
John Selden?
Mr. Chair, through you, Nancy, once again, retained is identified as A3, going to A3 instead of A2. I just want to bring that up again. But also the planner for Southwold said, and I quote in part, but MDS 1 is exempt on the surrounding lands as per guideline 9 of the MDS guidelines, as there is no specific policies contained in the OP requiring this aspect. Is that correct? And yet they go on to say that the severed parcel does meet MDS guidelines.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the guideline number 9 specifies that if a severed surplus farm dwelling is being severed and the barn is on the retained lands, no, the barn is on the severed lands, that MDS does not apply. So MDS does not apply if there's a surplus farm dwelling being severed and there's a barn existing on one of the other surrounding lands, then MDS does not apply. The only time it does apply is if MDS, the only time MDS does apply is if the barn is remaining on the retained lands. Then that would affect the severed surplus farm dwelling. So in order to deal with that, they have addressed that through a condition that basically says that they need to remove those barns, or again, get some sort of a building permit for a change of use to ensure that they cannot be used for livestock operations.
Okay.
Any comments from Don? And do you have any comments?
No, that's Nancy's again quite correct. That's the exact case with the MDS guideline 9. That's the scenario that happens. So what we have to ensure is that the subject lands, both retained and severed, there's no livestock component there that doesn't otherwise qualify to meet the MDS. If it's on a budding property, it's not applicable.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Any members have any comment? Mover and a seconder?
I'll move.
Moved by, who was moved?
John Selden.
Moved by John Selden, seconded by Rosemary Kennedy. Nancy, call the vote, please.
Okay. Application E25-21 be approved with conditions as noted. We'll call a vote. John Andrews. Ian Fleck.
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady.
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy.
Yes.
John Selden.
Yes.
Jack Van Kasteren.
Yes.
Stu Guldred.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
The decision rendered today for this application will be circulated within 15 days after the notice. There is a 20-day appeal period from the giving of the notice of decision in which any person or public body may appeal the decision or any condition imposed. If no appeal is received within 20 days of the giving of the notice, the provisional consent becomes final. The applicant has 1 year to meet the conditions imposed and submit the necessary documents for certification, or the consent will lapse and a new application will be required. Please leave the identification signs in place until the appeal period ends, after which they can be removed. If you would like to be notified of today's decision, please request a copy by contacting Nancy Pasto at npasto@elgin.ca.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
And
Doug.
have a good day. Thank you. Bye.
We'll now proceed, Nancy, with the E2521. Take notice an application has been made by Marion Wallace, 48554 York Line, Belmont, Ontario, for consent pursuant to Section 53 of the Planning Act 1990 as amended to sever lands municipally known as 48554 York Line, Township of Malahide. The applicants propose to sever a parcel with a frontage of 54.983 meters, 180.39 feet along York Line by a depth of 81.064 or slash 80.916 meters, 265.96 and slash 265.47 feet, and an area of 0.44 hectares, 1.09 acres containing one residence surplus to the needs of the owner. The owners are retaining 35.46 hectares, 87.62 acres proposed to remain in agricultural use. Applicants or agents and interested parties who wish to speak to this application, please introduce themselves to the committee.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jerry Collins. I'm acting as the agent for Marion Wallace, and I'm also the solicitor for Lewis Helka Farms Limited.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Collins. I'll now ask Nancy to proceed with the information.
Okay. The following comments were received from the Township of Malahide. They have no objection to this proposed severance, provided the following conditions are added: that the applicant initiate and assume, if required, all engineering costs associated with the preparation of a revised assessment schedule in accordance with the Drainage Act as amended, and deposit to be paid in full to the township prior to the condition being deemed fulfilled. That all entrance permits are required from the appropriate road authority as per our entrance control policy. That all outstanding work orders or bylaw enforcement issues be resolved to the satisfaction of the chief building official prior to the condition being deemed fulfilled. That the applicants initiate and assume all planning costs associated with the required official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, minor variance, or other land use planning process as required in accordance with the Ontario Planning Act. Confirmation that private sewage system be confined entirely within the boundaries of the newly created parcel. That system be in conformance with all required setbacks from lot lines prior to the condition being deemed fulfilled. That the necessary deeds, transfers, and charges for certificates and/or instruments necessary for registration be submitted. That an electronic version of the reference plan be submitted to the satisfaction of the municipality. That the applicant is responsible to apply and pay all fees to the township with respect to civic addressing numbers and signage for the severed and retained portions of the property. And that the existing barn should either be demolished or the animal stalls within the barn completely removed through a change of use permit with the township's building division, so to ensure there will not be livestock housed in this structure. Moving on then, the comments from Kettle Creek Conservation Authority. KCCA has reviewed the following applications and have no objection to their approval. From the county engineer, they've indicated it is not on a county road and have asked for no conditions. And from the county planning staff, generally they are supportive of this application, provided the following conditions are added: digital copy of the draft and final deposited reference plan, and a solicitor undertaking to provide a copy of the registered deed. And those were, oh, and there was a comment received from Piet Wuthorn, 48782 York Line. He had no objection and was in favor of the proposed severances, both of them, and he wanted to indicate that he would not attend the meeting. And those were all the comments received.
Any comments from any of the Land Division Committee members?
Mr. Chair, just a quick question. There's really no difference in concept between what we're doing here with the E25 and E26 and that the one that we did by Rodney, where we did 4 in a row. So there's always a question in my mind about how many of these could a landowner put on before we would object to them. And there's really no limit to it. I know there's subdivision limits and that sort of thing, plans of subdivisions and that sort of thing, but 2 lots like this, 4 lots on the other, there's really no barriers to the number of severances that we can allow on a certain piece of land, is there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, there is. There's within the county policies and the local municipalities, generally, it's between 4 and 5 lots that can be permitted, depending on where this is located. In this particular case, these are considered to be surplus farm dwellings. There is no actual limit on that in the county official plan, but some of the lower tier municipalities do have policies related to that. For instance, I believe it's Bayham that actually only permits 1 surplus farm dwelling per lot. So in this particular case, if this property had been located in Bayham, they would have been required to obtain an official plan amendment in order to allow for 2 severances.
Right.
But other municipalities do not have that criteria with respect to limiting the number of surplus farm dwellings that can be done. However, for severances, though, like is in the Rodney example, they are limited to 4 lots plus the retained, and that's for future residential development, because those were within a settlement area.
Yes, right.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, John?
I want to follow up on Dennis's question. Back to Nancy again. However, the planner for Malahide does point out that only 1 surplus dwelling can be done with farm consolidation. Applies only where a second dwelling would be the owners. Here, neither of the 2 are owners, so it doesn't apply. That seems a pretty subjective decision by the planner on Malahide's plan. Would that stand up in a court of law?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I guess it would have to be tested if it was appealed by an adjacent neighbor or the applicant based on conditions. That would be something that would be addressed at the LPAT, the Local Planning Approvals Tribunal. But at this time, the planner for Malahide has made those comments, and I see that Township of Malahide has supported the decision with conditions. So
I'd ask any comments from Mr. Collins, the solicitor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that the 2 applications read together are self-explanatory, and I don't have any further comments.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Any further comments or mover and seconder?
I'll move, Dennis.
Moved by Mr. O'Grady. Seconder? Who? Rosemary?
Yeah, sure.
I'll
Mr.
second,
Chair.
dude.
Sorry, I didn't.
Dude,
I don't hear all these.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, can I make one more comment?
Yes.
Yeah, there is a concern about the areas shown for those 2 different properties. They don't add up, I don't think.
We're dealing with E2521.
Yes. And the township planner did note that there appears to be minor discrepancies between the subject property's lot area as provided with the application. Do you know if that's been resolved? And in fact, I put a lot of time in trying to resolve those areas and I didn't have any luck myself.
Nancy, any comment?
I don't have any comments. The applicant has provided the application. They haven't indicated that there's been any need for change. All I can suggest is that the applicant, if there is a discrepancy going forward with this, the size of this or the configuration of this, that would be something that would need to be addressed at a future meeting of Land Division Committee would, especially if it was beyond the 3% that's required, permitted.
That's right.
With respect to our applications. So
right.
hopefully they have the correct measurements, but if they do not, then as you know, it is an amended application that will require a new decision and a $300 fee.
That's right.
Am I incorrect in what the planner said? I don't think so.
No, I see that too, John. The County Land Division Committee should ensure that accurate lot sizes are provided in its decision.
Yes, thank you.
I didn't see.
That was the township planner's notes, but again, I think it was just the comment just made by Nancy that if it turns out to be a discrepancy, then they will have to resubmit with another fee.
That's right.
Correct. Yeah.
That's correct. They must come back.
We can only do so much with respect to what the information we're given. So the applicant is supposed to fill out their form to the best of their knowledge based on the survey or plan that they provided. If it ends up being that they have made an incorrect assumption or that those measurements are incorrect, then that has to be rectified in some manner through a decision. So
that's right. And I think we've had some of those in the last year come back. We've had a couple come back. I think you had one, dude, come back. It was out to 3%, over the 3%. Any further comments?
We have to make decisions on what we're presented with.
That's right.
Correct, yep.
It's strong, it's not our problem.
Oh. We've got a mover and a seconder. We're ready for the vote?
Yep.
Okay, great. So move to approve application E25-21 with conditions as noted. We'll call a vote. John Andrews. Ian Fleck.
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady.
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy.
Yes.
John Selden.
Oh.
No. Okay. Jack Van Kasteren.
Yes.
Doug Aldred.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-2.
The decision rendered today for this application will be circulated within 15 days after the notice. There is a 20-day appeal period from the giving of the notice of decision in which any person or public body may appeal the decision or any condition imposed. If no appeal is received within 20 days of the giving of the notice, the provisional consent becomes final. The applicant has 1 year to meet the conditions imposed and submit the necessary documents for certification, or the consent will lapse and a new application will be required. Please leave the identification signs in place until the appeal period ends, after which they can be removed. If you'd like to be notified of today's decision, please request a copy by contacting Nancy Pasto at npasto@algon.ca. Now we will go forward with E2621.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Yes,
Have we-
Mr. Sullivan.
Has committee then approved the application in spite of the areas not being correct?
Nancy, yes.
Yes, that's
Go
correct.
ahead.
The application was approved with conditions. There was no alterations to any of the areas or lot lines. The information that was provided by the applicant is what committee has rendered their decision on. And as noted, if there ends up being a discrepancy in the future, then the applicant may be required to come back and receive an amended decision from the committee.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We have application E2621. Take notice of an application that has made by Marion Wallace, 48554 York Line, Belmont, for consent pursuant to section 53 of the Planning Act 1990 as amended to sever lands municipally known as 48670 York Line, Township of Malahide. The applicant proposed to sever a parcel with a frontage of 48.613 meters, 159.49 feet along York Line by a depth of 81.548 and /84.632 meters, 267.55 feet /277.66 feet, and an area of 0.4 hectares, 0.99 acres, containing one residence surplus to the needs of the owner. The owners are retaining 35.93 hectares, 88.78 acres, proposed to remain in agricultural use. The applicant or agents and interested parties who wish to speak to this application, please introduce themselves to the committee.
Once again, Mr. Chairman, my name is Jerry Collins. I'm acting as the agent for Marion Wallace.
Thank you. Nancy, will you proceed, please?
I can. The following comments were received from the Township of Malahide. They have no objection to the application, provided the following conditions are added: that the applicant initiate and assume, if required, all engineering costs associated with the preparation of a revised assessment schedule in accordance with the Drainage Act, as amended, with a deposit to be paid in full to the township prior to the condition being deemed fulfilled; that outstanding work orders or bylaw enforcement issues be resolved to the satisfaction of the chief building official; that the applicants initiate and assume all planning costs associated with the required official plan amendment, zoning amendment, minor variance, or other land use planning process; confirmation that private sewage system be confined entirely within the boundaries of the newly created parcel, and that the system be in conformance with all required setbacks from lot lines; that the necessary deeds, transfers, and charges for certificates and or instruments necessary for registration be submitted in triplicate; that all applicable property taxes, municipal fees, and charges be paid to the municipality, and that an electronic version of the reference plan be submitted, and that the applicant is responsible to apply and pay all fees to the township with respect to civic addressing numbers, signage for the severed and retained portions of the property. So comments received from the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority. They have no objection to the proposed application. The county engineer has indicated this is not on a county road and therefore have no conditions. And generally, the county planning staff supports this application, provided the following conditions are also added: a digital copy of the draft and final deposited reference plan, and a solicitor undertaking to provide a copy of the registered deed. And those are all the comments received.
Any comment from any members of the Land Division Committee?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, John?
just a modest point, no bacteriological results were provided for the well.
I guess.
And
Mike,
also since this one, sorry. And this
Go ahead.
2621 is tied to 2521, so the area presumably is still an issue. I'm sorry to be a pain on this, Mr. Chair. I know we're supposed to make a decision on what we've received. I'm just concerned about approving something where it appears as if the county, or not the county planner, the municipal planner is concerned that the areas aren't correct. What am I missing here, Mr. Chair or Nancy?
Well, I was wondering, I'm looking at that and reading it, but is one side yard different from the other side yard?
Not sure.
That's what I'm concerned is I'd like to ask the agent, does he know that? It looks to me that it's not a total square. There's a little bit of difference on the measurements maybe, but there's not shown.
2721. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yes. I'm looking at the sketch that was developed by the surveyor, and I think that is part of our package that we submitted. And it shows that there is just a slight difference in the depth on the east side as opposed to the west side. The west side was about 81.548, with the east side being 84.632.
Yeah. And that often happens on a lot in the country, John. They've got to adjust the road may be a little, the way they do it too. Any further comments? Yes, Nancy?
I just wanted to clarify as well for John, as indicated through even the previous application, although the Township of Malahide planner has indicated that they don't think that the areas are correct, we don't have any additional information at this time to indicate that what they're asking for is not what's going to ultimately be the lot. And the Malahide hasn't asked for an alteration to that. They've just asked that it be confirmed. So through the ultimate approval, the applicant is required to meet the decision, and if they do not meet the decision, they will need to amend that decision as well.
Do we have a mover and a seconder before we have any more discussion? Moved by Rosemary,
Yep.
Jack, second.
seconded by Jack. Is there any further discussion?
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. Why didn't the planner ask for a correction before they went to council, get all the approvals, send it to us, and have all the staff and committees do all this work when they've already identified it, and a simple question to the landowner might have resolved it? Why just bury it and let somebody else pass it on to somebody else to fix? I don't understand that. It's just a comment. I'm not looking for any answers.
But okay, Eddie. Any further questions?
In effect, Mr. Chair, excuse me, Mr. Chair, once again, we're asking, what has following up again on Dennis, if we've basically been provided with a caution that the areas are wrong, and I've forgotten what, on the county land division, I think the phrase is the county land division committee should ensure that accurate lot sizes are provided in its decisions.
But John, the solicitor, their solicitor said that he has a drawing or has something there. Do you not, Mr. Collins?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and it was part of our package that was submitted for each of these two severances. I submitted a survey because we're quite concerned about the problem of having hand-done sketches turn out to be wrong later. So you may not have it in your package, but this is the kind of thing that I had for each of the two parcels.
And they have different measurements on each side?
Yes, of this one, it was just, sorry, I was holding up the one for parcel number 1, but for parcel number 2, you can see in the picture, if I hold it correctly, that the easterly boundary is a little deeper.
Yes.
So we weren't aware of any concerns about descriptions until I'm listening to the proceedings today, because we tried to make the application jive perfectly with what the surveyor had done on purpose, because we didn't want to have to come back.
Any other comments,
Mike?
other members?
Yeah, I'll ask Mr. Chair. Dennis, you make a good point, but who knows when the township planner made that comment in his report. He may not have seen the application in its entirety yet, but I think it's all a moot point. Again, based on the county summary, the recommendation from the county is that it be approved subject to the following conditions. And number 2 is solicitor undertaking to provide a copy of the registered deed for the severed parcel once completed. So again, I think it's a moot point to discuss further, because it will be dealt with in the future if in fact there's a discrepancy.
Any further comments?
Actually, Ian, I just noted something that I would like to bring up. I didn't recognize that there was no Southwest Public Health testing done for this well, because there is a well on the property, and that's a requirement typically of any submission. And you'll see actually further on in one of the other applications as well, that was a requirement that was missed. So I want to ensure that that gets done. So unfortunately, I didn't twig to this until right now, based on John Sullivan's comments. I'm wondering if it's possible then for the county to amend their conditions and require that review from Southwest Public Health to ensure the quality of the water in the well Would the committee be willing to add such a condition?
Second, the mover and seconder agree to that?
I will
I'll
agree.
move.
Yes.
Okay, any further comments? I'll call the vote, Nancy.
I'm just making a note here. So we'll be adding a condition as well on Southwest
Yes.
Public Health for well. Okay, so having said that, application E, this is the motion to approve application E 26-21 with conditions, as well as an amended condition which requires a review of the well from Southwest Public Health to ensure it's in good working order. We'll take a vote. John Andrews? Ian Fleck?
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady?
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy?
Yes.
John Zeldin?
No.
Jack Van Kasteren?
Yes.
Doug Aldred?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-2.
The decision rendered today for this application will be circulated within 15 days after the notice. There is a 20-day appeal period from the giving of the notice of decision in which any person or public body may appeal the decision or any condition imposed. If no appeal is received within 20 days of the giving of the notice, the provisional consent becomes final. The applicant has 1 year to meet the conditions imposed and submit the necessary documents for certification, or the consent will lapse and a new application will be required. Please leave the identification signs in place until the appeal period ends, after which they can be removed. If you would like to be notified of today's decision, please request a copy by contacting Nancy Pasto at npasto@elgin.ca. And thank you to Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee, for all your work on this. Much appreciated. Bye-bye for now.
Bye. The next application we'll be dealing with, Nancy, E 2721.
That's correct. Let me just make sure. Yes, it's at 11:30. We can go ahead.
It's 5 to 12.
Mhm.
And it's 11:30, so we can start it.
Yes.
Take notice that an application has been made by James Simpson, 3473 Trillium Drive, Glencoe, Ontario, for consent pursuant to Section 53 of the Planning Act 1990, as amended to sever lands municipally known as 29420 Thames View Line, Municipality of Dutton Dunwich. The applicants propose to sever a parcel with a frontage of 60 meters, 196.85 feet along Thames View Line by a depth of 120 meters, 393.70 feet, and an area of 0.72 hectares, 1.78 acres, containing one residence surplus to the needs of the owner. The owners are retaining 141 hectares, 348.42 acres, proposed to remain in agricultural use. Applicants or agents and interested parties who wish to speak to this application, please introduce themselves to the committee.
Hi, my name is Kelly. I am James Stewart Simpson's daughter. It is our dwelling that is in question that we're requesting a severance. I just wanted to speak to this because it's a very specially built home. I am the mom of Jackson, who was prematurely born. It caused him to have severe cerebral palsy, and he requires a wheelchair full time. He has a seizure disorder, and he's also deaf. He requires 24-hour care, and I'm just going to share a bullet point document here. Or maybe I'm not. Okay, here we go. This is brief. We moved to Dutton Dunwich just before Jack's 5th birthday, and we lived in the original home on that farm for 10 years. Jackson grew and his needs changed. And we looked in our community to see if we could find something. My dad went to the township when we realized we could not find something, and we inquired about the proper process to build an accessible home in the far corner on the same farm. We built this home solely focused on meeting his complex needs, both physical and emotional. Jack's a farmer, and he needs to be in the country. This is a single level home. The doorways are all wheelchair sills. Each door is a minimum of 42 inches. His bedroom door is 4 feet wide. His bedroom and ensuite is equipped with an XY ceiling lift, and his bathroom, sink, toilet, everything accommodates a wheelchair. His tub is a large soaker tub built on a raised platform, so personal care can be done in a more ergonomic way. A permanent built-in custom change table also exists in his room. The open floor plan of the entire build allows Jackson access to the kitchen, allows room around the entire dining room area. We also lowered all the windows so that he could easily see out each one. He loves the outdoors, and he enjoys exploring the bush that surrounds the home. In 2017, Jackson's dad passed away. 8 months later, my mom also suddenly and unexpectedly passed. It left me as a single parent, and the only person that would have been his legal guardian is now gone. The reality is this. We never know what tomorrow brings, and that's why it's urgent. I feel an urgency to get a severance and secure this small lot and the specific build for Jackson. If anything were to happen to myself or my dad, without this severance, there's no way we can confidently know that this home would be available to Jack. So most people know there's a huge shortage in accessible homes for Jackson's population. The options are slim, and it's a 15-year waiting list should something happen. None of these options are in the country, and Jackson has endured so much in his 21 years, so many things that we simply cannot change. They're not in our control. It is my firm belief that Jackson is successfully navigating significant losses and life changes because he has the security and constant of this home, and we simply are seeking the severance to secure the home for the person who it was built for. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the time.
I'll now turn it over to Nancy for comments from the local municipality and the county.
That's right. So at this time, the municipality of Dutton Dunwich has provided the following comments. Municipality of Dutton Dunwich requests the County of Elgin table application E27-21 for 29420 Thames View Line at this time. I'll explain it a little further, I think, through the county comments as well. Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority, they have reviewed and staff have no objections to the proposal. From the county engineer, this is not on a county road, so there has been no conditions applied. And with respect to the severance, the the county planning has the following information. This particular application is located within a woodland as per Appendix 1 of the county official plan. Through this, we note that because it's in a woodland, normally an environmental impact study would be prepared to ensure that the severance does not affect the existing woodland. Looking back on some of the aerial photography, I note that there was a full woodlot here, and at some point there was a permit issued to remove a portion of this woodland, and I'm not sure if an EIS was done at that time, but hopefully there's an existing report that can be provided. If not, that would be a requirement for a future severance, for the severance. However, the municipality of Dutton Dunwich has requested a deferral for this application as the owner has not owned the surplus farm dwelling for more than 10 years. County of Elgin consequently supports this request and recommends a deferral of this application until such time as the municipality's official plan policy has been reviewed or approved. So as noted previously, that official plan amendment is with the county for review The change from 10 years to 5 years has been added within the Dutton Dunwich official plan. From what I understand, at the meeting that was held at the municipality of Dutton Dunwich, there was a request to look at that policy to see if it was still plausible to lower the amount of years from 10 to 5 years. So that is ongoing. But at this time, they have asked for a deferral until such time as the official plan amendment is approved by the county. And those are all the conditions received for this.
Could I add, the house, Nancy, it would be the house is built in 18? The house is 5 years old?
The house was built in, it was completed in 2015.
2015.
Yes. And we moved in early 2015, March of 2015.
Any comments from any other members?
Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to understand the ownership a little bit. Can somebody just go over that for me again? So it's there's a farmer that owns the agricultural land and all the woodlot and the land where this house is situated. And now that farmer wants to sever that off. Is that correct? Sever off this house, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And then the house will be deeded to, I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name of the person who just talked to us. The house will be deeded to this person?
The house will be deeded to the mother, like Kelly, my daughter.
Yes.
And the house is for her son, who, because of his medical situation, he'll have to have the property eventually in trust somehow. We're through a type of trust. We're trying to make it facilitate his needs.
So the township is saying because it's being deeded to the daughter and not you as the original owner, that they can't do that? Is that the rationale here?
No. Nancy, could clear that up, please.
Yeah, so the rationale for the municipality of Dutton Dunwich asking for a deferral is because the current policies of the municipality of Dutton Dunwich official plan require that any surplus farm dwelling cannot be severed unless the house is over 10 years old. And in this particular case, this house is under 10 years old. It is 5 or 7 years old, as was confirmed. So therefore, it doesn't meet the current policies of the municipality of Dutton Dunwich official plan. Now, through their official plan review that they're currently doing, they are submitting or have submitted to the county a review of their official plan amendments. And one of those amendments was to reduce that from 10 years to 5 years for surplus farm dwelling. So somebody can consider severing a surplus farm dwelling if it's 5 years old and above rather than 10. So that's one of the considerations. So right now it's in a bit of a limbo because it's with the county. But from what I understand at the meeting on at municipal council, there was also discussion on whether that condition should continue or if they should continue to allow 10 years or 5 years. So that'll be something that we'll have to further inquire of the municipality of Dutton Dunwich.
So the owners may wish to make a comment back to both the county and the township that specially adapted houses for people with conditions like your son, and there are many others. As we get older, we're going to have to adapt to different houses and build different houses, that perhaps there should be some accommodation in the OP, not just for an existing farmhouse, but for a house which has been built for people who live in the area that requires special conditions. So that might be a comment you wish to make in their review of both the county and the township official plan.
I started this in 2013 with the support of the municipality. My understanding at that point that there was no 10-year restriction when we started this. That came about after we started the process, which we understand. Going forward, I found that I'm not sure if I should speak to this, if this is the right time to speak to this, but I found that there's been amendments to the 10-year thing in certain areas in Elgin. I just would like to ask and have it understood that we are looking for a way to fulfill fulfill this however we need to fulfill it appropriately, to go on and have it severed so that before we're gone from this earth, we can have this dealt with.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I've got another comment to make on the EIS. I recall the other property that we had where it was built in a significant woodlot, and they didn't require a full EIS. They just had to look at whether or not the significant woodland was be affected, and that's a very simple review. And so I'm just wondering what the difference is between this one, where if we're only concerned about significant woodland, it is a very simple process, whereas a full EIS, according to the county's official plan, requires 3 seasons of botanical collections. So you're looking at least a year before you complete the EIS. I don't think that's appropriate in this particular case. If the only thing we're considering is whether or not
further
this
comments from any other?
tiny lot will have an issue with the woodland or not.
So through you, Mr. Chair, it is anticipated that the CIS would be simple. The conditions and the policies are the same in the county, but we can scope an EIS appropriately to determine what's required in order to allow for the severance to occur. In this particular case, I'm sure because of the existing home, we're looking at just the surplus farm dwelling lot line. So we just want to confirm that there's going to be no further impact on any woodlot. And that's really what we'd be looking for. But again, that would be scoped with the appropriate staff members, and that's what we'd be looking for. So we're not asking for a full 3-season inventory. We're just looking for something to confirm that this lot line will not impact that woodlot in the future.
Any further comments?
Yes, Ian, I'd like to comment here.
Yes.
Hey,
Yes, Duke.
this severance here fits every category except one, the age of the house. It is a unique situation. I do know other municipalities, West Elgin has made amendments to their bylaw on this 10-year thing for unique situations. I think West or Dunwich Council, if they would take it to their account, they could make an amendment to this bylaw because it is a unique situation. Counting on their proposal to have the 10 years 5 has got to go through a lot of hoops. I'm betting the 10 years will be here before that ever happens. I'm wondering if Land Division, if we have the right to, or the power to suggest to Dutton Dunwich that they look at an amendment on this application.
Nancy?
If that's a
I'd like to
Go
have
ahead, Nancy.
Nancy.
So through you, Mr. Chair, at this time, the policies are what they are. They are 10 years and they are proposing 5 years as part of their package. So that's not been approved as of yet. LDC can certainly direct or could provide a recommendation to municipality of Dutton Dunwich to initiate some sort of an official plan amendment to allow for a special policy, for instance, for these lands. But I don't think the municipality has, I'm not sure ultimately what, if the municipality just determines they don't want to do that, for instance, I don't know what recourse the committee would have. So in this particular case, Land Division has the information in front of them. You can make a decision based on the information that you have. You can choose to not defer it if you so choose and continue on with the application, for instance, to recommend approval. However, I do suggest, though, that you send it back to staff to ensure that the appropriate conditions are added, because at this time, there may be some additional conditions, like, for instance, clarification on the EIS required, that sort of thing might need to be addressed. So there could be a deferral till next month to come up with a list of conditions if that's what you want to direct. Or you can continue with the deferral as put before you from county planning staff and the municipality of Dutton Dunwich.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, building on what Duke said, we've had plenty of discussions in the past about the number of excess farm dwellings that are being severed and the concerns that come about. I personally would rather see Dutton Dunwich, in this case, keep their 10-year rather than move it down to 5. But I also believe, building on what Duke said, that there should be a vehicle available to look at specific circumstances. Like Dennis said as well, that as times change and as needs change, this is not a severance proposal that is somehow benefiting a farmer to sell off a property that is excess. This is for a specific need, and the reasons are very clear. So I propose that we come up with some kind of motion that includes sending it back to Dutton Dunwich with the caveat that they look at providing it in this special circumstance, if that's possible.
Mr. I'd like to speak to that in a way. I think with what we've got from Dutton Dunwich, and I agree with all of you. I agree, but I think we should have a meeting as soon as they should be notified, Dutton Dunwich, what this is, the feeling we have on it, and see if they can come up with something in the next month and get it to our next meeting to deal with it. Now I'll ask Rosemary.
Could we not approve this with the condition that the township do this? So that these people can get on with their lives and get things done they need to get done. I don't like the 10 years. I think that's terrible, but that's me.
We're in a problem too, because 2 years ago, the Ministry of Agriculture said we shouldn't have any. And I think Duke's heard that too. And it's a real problem, but they've got themselves in a mess there. But I don't think we should dictate when they've asked us to defer it and send it back that we want an answer.
I just like to share that I sent an email to the municipality in late fall of 2019. It was exactly what I shared with you, just the facts of our circumstances. I asked if I could be put on the agenda, and anyway, it kind of it went flat. In my frustration of how much time and all the things that we've done to, with our application, and I got a hold of, and this COVID, you can talk to somebody on Wednesday from this time to this time, and if they don't get back to you, you have to wait till the next Wednesday. It's everybody's frustration. My point is, yesterday, I finally just kept dialing numbers, and Bob Purcell asked me to resend him the email that I sent 2 years ago, well, a year and a half ago. I did that. He then shared it with some of his council members, and there's a request that we get put on the agenda. Some of it, I feel like, and the reason I'm speaking today is like, I'm making our personal circumstances known. It is very specific. There is no housing for Jack's population. It's so specific. And I thought that that's why there was a platform or an opportunity for amendments.
Well, thank you, Kelly. I would really stress that we should, as a land division committee, work with it, because I know that the council of Dutton Dunwich, as Kelly has said, as of yesterday, have had it, and I had more thoughts on this than they've ever had, I think. And I would like to defer it and bring it back in 1 month's time, and let's do it right, that we don't do one hoop and we don't get it right. But let's say we're going to do it and get them. They're on site. I believe they are 100%.
Okay, Ian, did I make a motion here?
Yes. We have a motion on the floor, do we not? Doug? Nancy, do we have a motion on the floor?
No, we do not have a motion.
No.
Go ahead.
I would like to make a motion that we defer it and send back to Dutton Dunwich our opinion that they should strongly look at the situation and look at a bylaw amendment to suit this situation.
Do I have a seconder?
So moved, Dennis.
Moved by Doug Aldred, seconded by Dennis.
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment before we pass on that?
Yes, John.
And I appreciate it. Ian, I think that's a great thing, but can that be changed a little bit? Can we put a time frame on it? These people have waited long enough.
I think the chairman had suggested that they try and do it in time for our next meeting.
Yes.
A month
I
from
mean,
now.
well, can we make that part of the
I personally don't think we want to make it too complicated.
Can I make a comment?
Yes,
Mr.
Jack.
Chair? I'll play the devil's advocate for a minute. Motion's on the floor and seconded. Would it be plausible, looking at the recommendation, municipality of Dutton Dunwich has requested a deferral, but it's up to us as the land division committee. We could choose to approve this application based on the individual circumstances of this application. And then it will go back to Dutton Dunwich to have to deal with on this individual circumstances that the land division committee has approved it. It would kind of force the issue, would it not, that they have to deal with this? I'm looking for pros and cons of doing that.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's the nuclear option that we can have in our back pocket. It's working with councils. It's always better to suggest some things to talk about, and then it sounds as though that the landowners have done a fair amount of background work already, so they may be actually close there. And I like Jack's idea, and I want to hold that in reserve to see if the carrot approach might work first.
Yeah, there's merits in both sides, right? Yeah. I would just like to see somehow that this doesn't get pushed under the table any longer for the applicant's sake, that it's brought forward and dealt with.
Well, I shouldn't maybe say this, but I think there's been enough what happened yesterday and has happened the last couple of days. Let's give Dutton Dunwich a chance to come, and they're meeting tonight.
Okay.
They have the information from Kelly.
Awesome. Okay.
Sorry, I shouldn't be maybe, but.
No, didn't hear a thing.
I'm as much for this as any of you are.
And I just want to, I'm done taking up your time. I just have so much respect that you guys sit still and handle this is amazing to me. I do want to say this very discussion is why we wanted Jackson to have a life in Elgin County. And as challenging as it has been, your support and your concern for us getting this done so soon, the fact that you care is exactly why I know we built in the right county, in the right community. So thank you.
You did, Kelly.
Awesome.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more comment if I can before you call the vote. Sometimes with the zoning bylaw, the official plan, it's a hang up on wording. And I know that the applicants have looked at making it into a trust. And so perhaps trying to advance that, I don't know I know there are different organizations that understand that process, and maybe coming at it as, whether it be a trust, an institution, a commercial, something that would give the council something to say, okay, this is different from a normal farm severance. This is a trust, or this is an institution, or this is something else. I don't know if that's necessary. I don't know if it'll work, but sometimes a slightly different angle would give council something to hang their hat on to say, okay, this doesn't fit within anything we've got in our OP. This is completely different. So I'd suggest that you talk to some of the organizations out there that have already established these trusts and have had single family homes turned into these types of homes to see what they have done to get around the various municipal planning guidelines.
Okay, I think we've had some discussion, and very worthwhile discussion on this matter, which we all know is very serious. And But I'd like Nancy now to call the vote.
Okay, so just to clarify, right now the motion is to defer this application to allow the municipality of Dutton Dunwich to review their policies and provide a recommendation on this application and conditions if appropriate. How's that?
I
Yes,
think we were going to send a letter or notify them or talk to them somehow, not just defer it. Weren't we going to
No.
send a letter? I mean, we
Yeah,
don't need to. If we want to see how council's going to react, we can wait till see how they react and then send
we can provide them a letter. Yep.
but what I'm saying, as chairman, I would like to see this faxed to the clerk, the CEO clerk of the municipality, because they're meeting at 5 o'clock tonight.
Question or comment? Could,
Yes,
could the motion that Nancy is drafting, or the wording of the motion, include the comment that the land division is generally in favor of this application, but has agreed to defer back to Dutton Dunwich? Something like that. It's making known that the land division committee is generally in favor. I shouldn't speak out of turn. I'm not going to speak for everyone, but that's just a comment.
well, first of all, what does the mover and the seconder?
Okay, Nancy had in there to allow Dutton Dunwich to have a look at it. I think we don't necessarily want to allow them. We want them to definitely have a look at options of
Yes,
their addressing their bylaw amendment.
I would agree with the mover on that we're looking for options. That's a good way of putting it. We're not demanding anything. We're not forcing anything, but we'd like to see some options for this.
do we have
I agree with that wording.
agreement of the seconder?
I think I seconded it, didn't I? Did I
Nancy
second that,
would-
Nancy?
Yeah.
It's been so long.
Think you did,
I've
Dan.
forgotten. It's been so long.
Okay, let's,
Okay, let's go over this so we get it right. The motion is to defer the application to allow Dutton Dunwich to look at options for supporting this consent application. And that this
A way of a bylaw.
this okay, so that's different. That would be requesting then that Dutton Dunwich actually initiate some sort of a bylaw amendment or official plan amendment for this application. That would take a long time, just so you know, because that would take several months in order to be able to process some sort of bylaw or amendment application. What I'm thinking more is that if LDC indicates to municipality of Dutton Dunwich that they are generally want Dutton Dunwich to look at this from an approval perspective with the current policy, or noting that the current policies, although not enforced yet, that they will be enforced. So they do support it on that basis. They could do that rather than have to go through an official plan amendment, because otherwise this will add time to an application.
we'll add a long time.
Yeah. So I'm really just trying to get it so that way Dutton Dunwich tonight has the information in front of them that basically key points. LDC generally supports the application, and that they're hopeful that Dutton Dunwich can also support the application given the extenuating circumstances, basically, is what it comes down to.
Yep, short
Perfect.
and sweet. Short and
Okay.
sweet. Yep.
Perfect.
Yep.
Is that good? Okay.
Yep.
So then the motion will be for LDC to send a resolution to municipality of Dutton Dunwich to let them know that they are generally supportive of this application, and hope that Dutton Dunwich can provide a resolution on the matter so that the application can be approved or something to that
Yes.
effect. Okay?
Yep.
All right.
Yes,
That's good. So that was moved by Doug and seconded by Dennis.
yes,
Okay.
Doug. It was moved by Doug.
Mm-hmm. By Dennis. Okay, so we'll call a vote.
Yes,
Okay. So the motion of E 27-21, motion to defer to allow Dutton Dunwich the opportunity to provide, so the resolution that Land Division Committee supports this application and wants Dutton Dunwich to review their policies to support this application as well. I'll have to find a better way to word this, but basically that's what it is. We'll call a vote. John Andrews, Ian Fleck,
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady,
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy,
Yes.
John Selden,
Yes.
Jack Van Castren,
Yes.
Doug Aldridge.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
Nancy, if you have any questions on the wording, go through the chair, and he'll help you out with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't need to read this decision at the end, right? No. Okay, so now we're at,
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you
Thanks,
all.
Kelly.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're on E2821.
Just in case you lose me here, I'm on low battery and I'm plugged in and I'm still not keeping up. So you may lose me.
Well, quick, we better get through it quick. Can't afford to lose another vote.
Okay, we're on E2821. Take notice an application has been made by John Hildebrand, 10612 Culloden Road, Elmer, for consent pursuant to Section 53 of the Planning Act 1990 as amended to sever lands municipally known as 10612 Culloden Road, Municipality of Bayham. The applicants propose to sever a parcel with a frontage of 20.0 meters, 65.62 feet along Culloden Road by a depth of 97.522 meters, 319.95 feet, and an area of 0.19 hectares, 0.47 acres for future residential use. The owners are retaining 0.37 hectares, 0.19 acres, proposed to remain in residential use. Applicants or agents and interested parties who wish to speak to this application, please introduce yourselves to the committee.
Hi, I'm John Hildebrand.
Yes, thank you, John.
Thank you.
I'd ask Nancy to speak to this, please.
Mm-hmm. So the following comments were provided from the municipality of Bayham. They support application E28-21, provided the following conditions are included. A digital copy of the final survey provided to the municipality, a planning report fee payable to the municipality, installation of a private well with water quantity and water quality reports for bacteria and nitrites, content meeting the provincial standards for residential use as a matter of public health and safety, municipal lot assessment for soil evaluation for septic, a grading plan, a municipal drain connection, legal outlet for Drainage Act petition, purchase civic number signage for the severed lot, parkland dedication fee payable to the municipality, and confirmation of available county road access. Let me just skip ahead here. Comments from Long Point Conservation Authority had no concerns with this application. The county engineer provided the following: a direct connection to a legal outlet for the severed lot is required. If an existing connection is unavailable to the satisfaction of the county engineer, all costs to be borne by the owner. That if necessary, an entrance permit be obtained from the Elgin County for the entrance to the severed parcel, all costs associated with this borne by the owner, and a lot grading plan is required for the severed lot. And from the county planning staff, so as part of this application, normally a septic and a well inspection are required, as well as a well record from the Southwest Public Health, a test. And those were missed when the application was submitted. So therefore, staff want to note that that information will be required as part of this, as part of the conditions of the consent. So generally, staff do support this application and recommend the following. The applicant is required to submit written confirmation from a licensed well and licensed septic installer that the well and septic system are in satisfactory operating condition and the well provides the quality and quantity of potable water required. A water test is also required from the Southwest Public Health confirming the quality of the existing well water. A digital copy of the draft and final deposited reference plan be provided, and a solicitor undertaking to provide a copy of the registered deed once completed. So I believe those were all the conditions required as part of this application.
Any questions from members of the Land Division Committee?
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
through you to Nancy, the PPS was not addressed in that as far as I can see. Perhaps it was, I missed it in yours, but is it considered a 113 or 1131 or 1132?
Yep, through you, Mr. Chair, this application is located within a tier 3 settlement area for the county of Elgin, so it is within a settlement area.
Yes.
So therefore it does meet the policies of our official plan as well as the provincial policy statement.
Yep.
It just wasn't addressed in the application.
Any further questions? Does the agent or the applicant have anything any comments?
Yeah, so we had a new well on the retained property put in last year as well as a septic system. So we are going to get those re-inspected and have the quantity report for you guys. We have that scheduled for tomorrow. And there's a new well that's on the parcel 1, the supposed severance part, and it'll be tested at the same time and sent in as soon as we have the reports from the well technician.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? If not, I'd ask for a mover and a seconder.
I'll move it, Dennis.
Moved by Dennis,
I'll second it, Jack.
seconded by Jack. Any further questions, discussion? Nancy, we call the vote, please.
Okay, motion to approve application E28-21 with conditions as noted. We'll call the vote. John Andrews. Ian Fleck.
Yes.
Dennis O'Grady.
Yes.
Rosemary Kennedy.
Yes.
John Selden.
Yes.
Jack Van Kasteren.
Yes. Yes.
Did I hear a yes? Yes. Doug Aldred.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
The decision rendered today for this application will be circulated within 15 days after the notice. There is a 20-day appeal period from the giving of the notice of decision in which any person or public body may appeal the decision or any condition imposed. If no appeal is received within 20 days of the giving of the notice, the provisional consent becomes final. The applicant has 1 year to meet the conditions imposed and submit the necessary documents for certification, or the consent will be lapsed and a new application will be required. Please leave the identification signs in place until the appeal period ends, after which they can be removed. If you would like to be notified of today's decision, please request a copy by contacting Nancy Pasto at nanpasto@elgin.ca. Thank you. Any further items, Nancy?
I have nothing.
I just like, we're done on that one. I'd like to just thank you, John. I'd like to just say to the committee, I appreciate the work for today. This has been a long meeting and a lot of special decisions had to be made. Yes, Rosemary?
Can I just make a recommendation? And I'm going back on my 4 years from sitting on the committee before. When we had applications like the Parazanovic Farms, what they did was they read the initial part of each one, like you would read the initial part for all 4 applications. Then Nancy would go through all the stuff she did go through. You would have a separate vote on each one, and then at the end of those 4, you would read the end thing. I'm just thinking it's a time thing, but I know when you read each one, when we had multiple applicants, we only read the end part once after the end of all the applications. And that's just a suggestion, and that goes back 4 years, so yeah.
I inquired about that from another municipality. You can do it if all four, they said, if all the measurements, the widths and everything's the same. But if you get a different measurement and a different, a little bit acreage is different, you're supposed to do them all. And I wondered about that when I had them, but I'm only bringing that suggestion up from another legal opinion.
Well, I know this happened in land division before. You would read them, like they would each be dealt with separately, but just reading them, it would all be all four at once, like the four at the top. And then you would
Yes,
deal with them separately.
Yep.
I agree, Rosemary. We just read that final verbiage and we said like E1921, E2021. You
Yep.
listed the four off and you just read the final verbiage once.
Exactly. That's what we used to do anyways. Yeah. It's just a thought. You don't have to
Yep.
do it. I'm just
Good
throwing it
idea.
out.
It's a good idea. It's
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, having started this committee in June and never having done one before, we were doing it, and I have no frame of reference either, for that matter. I haven't been able to look at past applications and past committee meetings to see how it was done. So unfortunately, I haven't had that benefit. So we've been doing it as such because each one needs to have a resolution. But if there's a better way to do it, I mean, we're always open to that. So we'll note that.
I agree. So I thank everybody and I thank staff members, and I know it's difficult doing it by Zoom. I find it difficult at times anyway.
Good
Well,
job,
we can only
Ian.
hope next month, maybe. Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But I appreciate all your thoughts on the one for that house. It's been a real sad, and it's, I guess we're the only ones here. What happened to Mr. Simpson's mother was disaster, or wife, you knew that, Duke.
Yep.
It was even worse. She drove off